Thank you for coming. Welcome. Is it recorded? Welcome to the Appropriations Committee. My name is Rob Clements. I'm from Elmwood. I represent Legislative District 2, which is Cass County and Eastern Lancaster County. I serve as chair of this committee. We will start off by having the members do self-introductions, starting with my far right.
Hi, Christy Armanderos from District 18 in Omaha, Bennington, and a little piece of Elkhorn.
Senator Myron Dorn, Gage County and part of Lancaster.
Robert Gober, Madison County, the south end of Pierce County.
Tony Vargas, District 7, downtown and South Omaha.
Mike McDonald, Legislative District 5, South Omaha.
Lauren Lippincott, District 34.
Steve Erdman, District 47.
Assisting the committee today is Corey Beerbaum, our committee clerk. And to my left is our fiscal analyst, Eric Kosick. And our page today is Ella Schmidt. She's from Lincoln, a criminal justice and political science major at the University of Nebraska. If you're planning on testifying today, please fill out a green testifier sheet located in the back of the room and hand it to the page when you come up to testify. If you will not be testifying but want to go on record as having a position on a bill being heard today, there are yellow sign-in sheets at each entrance where you may leave your name and other pertinent information. These sign-in sheets will become exhibits in the permanent record after today's hearing. To better facilitate today's hearing, I ask that you abide by the following procedures. Please silence your cell phones. Move to the front chairs to testify when your bill or agency is up. When hearing bills, the order of testimony will be introducer, proponents, opponents, neutral, and closing. When we hear testimony regarding agencies, we will first hear from a representative of the agency. Then we will hear testimony from anyone who wishes to speak on the agency's budget request. When you come to testify, please spell your first and last name for the record before you testify. Be concise. We request that you limit your testimony to 5 minutes or less. Written material may be distributed to the committee members as exhibits only while testimony is being offered. Hand them to the page for distribution when you come up to testify. If you have written testimony but do not have 12 copies, please raise your hand now so the page can make copies for you. With that, we will begin today's hearing with the budget for Agency 65, Department of Administrative Services. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the committee. My name is Jason Jackson, Jason, Jackson, and I'm the Director of the Department of Administrative Services, and I'm here to testify in support of the Governor's budget recommendation. I'm passing out an exhibit that I'll refer to later in my testimony. And I apologize in advance, Mr. Chairman. I anticipate my testimony may go over 5 minutes, so by all means, cut me off if you don't think it's germane.
So with directors, we allow flexibility. So
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Appreciate it. So just as a reminder, Administrative Services is responsible for the back office business operations of state government. We manage procurement operations, accounting operations, vehicle fleet operations, real estate and building management, and HR and personnel services. We've just completed a great calendar year 23, and we've had two enduring priorities that I know are interest to the committee, and they are enduring priorities going into calendar year 24. Specifically, I'll begin just with procurement reform. The committee remembers the issues related to the failed St. Francis Ministries procurement of several years ago. Flowing out of that was the LR 29 Special Investigative Committee, chaired by now Speaker Arch. As a result of that committee's work, DAS was directed to work with a consultant to assess end-to-end our procurement system for Nebraska. In calendar year 23, we partnered with ACASO. And ACASO identified 34 recommendations for our procurement system. Of those, with the speaker's agreement, we're implementing 33. And in the past calendar year, we've really been focused on that implementation effort. And from an administrative perspective, we fully implemented 23 of the 33 provisions of the ACASO report. That the balance of those are in LB 461, the speaker's priority bill. That will represent comprehensive procurement reform for Nebraska. We're really eager to see that get passed and implemented. And when it does so, Nebraskans can be very confident that our procurement system compares very favorably to any of the 50 states. So appreciate this committee's green vote on both general file and select file for LB 461, and we're looking forward to seeing that get passed. Next, I'll refer to the exhibit in front of you. I know the committee and the administration has been very interested in our accounting operations and the infirmities within our accounting operations and our continuous improvement efforts in our accounting system. And specifically as it pertains to the annual comprehensive financial report, recall that this is a statutory duty of DAS Accounting Division to basically produce a comprehensive annual financial statement of the state in advance of the legislature's convening. Again, a little bit of history here, which I know the committee is familiar with, but just for the benefit of the record and some of the new senators, with COVID, we received over $2.5 billion in federal funding and proved to be unable to scale to really manage those funds and or run the business operations. And so that exposed a number of infirmities in our processes. It exposed underperformance and it exposed under-resourcing from an accounting operations perspective. We've been working on that now for 3 years to try to continue to improve it. The graph basically shows a pictorial reference to the progress that's been made. FY 2020 was the very adverse report with the adverse audit that accompanied it. It noted the APA identified about 20 billion in adjustments that went into that report, and we had a disclaimed opinion. In the subsequent year, FY 2021, we also had a disclaimed opinion with about $10 billion in adjustments. And then in the last year, we showed modest improvement. We had a solid opinion for the preponderance of the report, but for the infirmities in the Department of Labor Unemployment Fund. And auditor adjustments recommended at $2.8 billion. We just completed the FY 23 annual comprehensive report. That was published in December on time in advance of the legislature's convening as is statutorily required, with an unmodified opinion and a little under $1 billion in recommended adjustments from the auditors. We've made those fixes, so the legislature is in receipt of a completely accurate financial report. And so although this shows modest progress, there's much more work to do. We are constructively dissatisfied with where we are here. Our enduring goal is an on-time report with reduced errors and a completely unmodified opinion in every subsequent year. So again, if anything, I would say the graph that I've shared with you might present a rosier picture than I intend to convey. We remain very focused on this and intend to continue to really press into this with an expectation that we need to continue to get better and we need to get better faster. I want to express my gratitude to Mike Foley and the entire APA team for their work. We've enjoyed a great collaborative relationship with them this past year in terms of their identifying infirmities in our processes, things we can do to change, recommending adjustments, all of which we've accepted and we've made. And we intend to build on that in the coming year. And my hope and expectation is that we'll be working with the agencies to make sure we don't see any recurring mistakes that were identified in this year's audited annual comprehensive financial report. And I anticipate the committee may have some more questions about that, which I'll be happy to address in Q&A if that's your preference. But that does allow me to kind of pivot into the governor's recommendation and some of the specifics there. And in particular, I appreciate this committee's investment in our accounting operations. That has allowed us to make some of the progress that we've made. Again, one of the infirmities that was exposed was just under-resourcing in this area. And the committee's giving us the resources we need to make sure that we can firm this up and that the team is adequately staffed with the adequately skilled people has really assisted us in our efforts. And I'll note that in the governor's recommendation for the coming fiscal year, we recommend an additional $300,000, a little in excess of that in terms of operating spend, and about $270,000 in PSL to the accounting division to continue this progress. So appreciate the committee's support for that. Next, I'll pivot to risk management. So risk management, think about this like this, the state's insurance portfolio. And what we're seeing here is that our catastrophic or our excess carrier coverage, the premiums on that continue to go up in an exponential way. And so that's eating into our cash reserves, that's eating into our appropriation. And so the governor's recommendation here includes a $5 million transfer from the cash reserve into the risk management budget. Recall last year, we've been facing these premium increases from our excess carriers for several years. Last year, we took the step of increasing our self-insurance within the portfolio to try to minimize this type of move. And it's proved to just be insufficient relative to what we're seeing in terms of the premiums that we're seeing in the marketplace. And so last year, we increased our self-insurance from $300,000 to $1 million. So within your personal insurance, think about this like it's your deductible. Okay, so we basically increased the state's deductible from $300,000 to $1 million in the hopes that that would reduce our premiums, and it had some impact. But we're even for those coverages that exceed $1 million, we're seeing those premiums increase at a very high rate. And so what this recommendation is all about is just making sure that we're adequately insured against foreseeable losses and that we can cover our premiums on those excess carrier coverages. Next, I'll talk about the SOS State Personnel Program. SOS stands for Specialty Office Services. This is basically the state's temporary workforce. And what we're seeing here is basically continued high demand for the SOS program, coupled with the fact that in the current biennium budget, we didn't adjust the appropriation or the PSL relative to the wage increases that the workforce saw. And as a consequence, the budget on that is running a little hot. And the risk we run if we don't increase DAS's appropriation in PSL here is that we may have to turn away customer agencies when we get to the latter half of the biennium. So our general frame on this is that this isn't money, this is appropriation in PSL, which is usually how DAS is with a revolving fund. And what we don't want to do as a general policy matter is where you've given an agency a statutory duty or a program obligation, and you've given them operational budget to achieve that. We generally don't want the DAS appropriation or PSL ceiling to be the impediment to that getting accomplished. And so this is just putting us in a position that we can raise those thresholds and not be at risk of turning customer agencies away as we get into the second half of the second year of the biennium. I'll move on to some favorable budget adjustments, beginning with Building Division. Really proud of the work of State Building Division and the Nebraska State Patrol. They had a just great collaboration and entrepreneurialism related to the capital construction project for the Troop A headquarters up in Omaha. This committee appropriated about $32 million to that project last year. In the intervening months, Building Division and State Patrol have identified an existing building that meets all of State Patrol's programmatic needs. And so rather than going the new construction route, we're in the process of purchasing that facility. And we anticipate that with the purchase and then subsequent modifications of that facility, that'll be favorable to the state's bottom line to the tune of about $18.2 million. So that's what's informed with the governor's recommendation there. Next, I'll talk about the teammate dependent community college benefit. Basically, this is a program that reimburses state teammates who are sending dependent children to community colleges here in Nebraska. This committee invested in that program last year. It was basically a pilot at that stage. It's been enormously successful. We've seen over 400 teammates benefit and seek reimbursement for their dependent children that are going to community college. But we conservatively, I think, overestimated the funds that this program would need based on the demand that we're seeing for it. And as a consequence, we recommend canceling the $1.5 million transfer into this fund that's scheduled to occur in July. Basically, the program has the resources it needs for the current biennium based on existing demand. And then we'll evaluate going into the next biennium what that looks like. And then finally, I'll hit upon the director's office. The governor's recommendation recommends basically favorable adjustments or reductions to our director's office fund in excess of $400,000 across all fund types. This predominantly relates to the wind down of the Center of Operational Excellence operations in the past year. Recall that DAS is responsible for operations excellence and continuous improvement throughout the state. For many years, the COE was the means by which we did that. In the past year, at the direction of this committee and Senator Armendariz, thank you for your leadership on engaging with a consultant to look at end-to-end performance across the breadth of the executive branch. That effort is in flight, already paying dividends, and the focus on that effort and the COE having already met its mission led to winding down that program. And I'm pleased to say that just about every process improvement coordinator in that program found other alternative employment opportunities with the state. So that was a success story that we're really pleased with. I'll just conclude by talking about fund balances a little bit. I know that's been an area of emphasis for the committee. In administrative services, under my leadership and under Governor Pillen's direction, we always regard it as an impropriety for funds to accumulate large balances. That's never our objective. And so our general kind of aid to judgment is we look every month at our fund balances and look for an operational minimum of about 60 days of just cash flow operational balance, and then a ceiling of 180 days of cash flow. And we always want to be in that range. And if we exceed 180 days of our operational budget, we start asking ourselves hard questions about, are we charging our customers too much? Do we need to abate our rates? Do we need to lower our rates? Are we giving our customers insufficient value and we should have more projects against a particular fund? And then we also, of course, let that inform our budget recommendation into the next biennium to say, hey, we should be looking at lowering our rates. So I'll note that neither the committee nor the governor have recommended adjustments to DAS's fund balances. And we hope that reflects your confidence that we're really managing these fund balances with rigor. So we appreciate that. DAS is, we administratively support, of course, the budget office, OCIO, and Capital Commission. So leaders from those respective divisions will be coming in behind me to talk about those specific programs. So that concludes my testimony, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there questions from the committee? All right, Senator Wishart.
Yeah, so thank you, Director, for being here. And potentially the Capital Commission can discuss this as well. But just what is I'd like to see a long-term plan about parking around the Capitol. It's becoming increasingly challenging from my perspective for staff members who don't have designated parking to find parking, and then also constituents who want to come and visit the Capitol. And so I'd like to get an idea of what is the long-term plan for us to relieve some of the congestion that occurs around parking around the perimeter of the Capitol, so that constituents can be able to access those parking spots, and whether you have a sort of a plan for how that would work.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. So I've been DAS director for roughly 6 years now. Parking has been an enduring area of focus. It was particularly an area of focus when I first began. I think our wait list for state teammates at that time was in excess of 1,500 teammates waiting for a designated spot. And public servants might wait upwards of 2 years, to accumulate service time before they would have an opportunity to park in a state lot. So that was an early focus area for me, was alleviating that burden. And I know you as senators your focus is constituent service, and appropriately so. As an HR practitioner myself, I was concerned that was actually an impediment to employment with the state. Was getting people to even accept a job with the state because they knew it might be 2 years before they would get a parking spot. So where we sit today, is our wait list for state teammates, at least as of several weeks ago when I last looked at it, was 0. And now we have a preference list for teammates that might prefer alternative lots. But generally speaking, if it's your desire to park in a state lot, you have an opportunity to do so on your first day. And if you have teammates within the legislative branch that aren't experiencing that, I'd love to hear about that because that is at odds with our own expectations. In terms of plans for more capacity, we don't currently have plans for more capacity. My portfolio at this point is making sure our workforce needs are met. And as I look at the data right now, it appears that that's adequately handled. And again, so if within your staffs you're experiencing something different, I would welcome more information so that I could look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Senator Vargas?
Sir.
Thank you very much for being here. And 6 years goes by really quickly. As we're looking for some of us that are going to be leaving here at the end of this.
Sometimes it doesn't feel so quick. But
I can imagine. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about the SOS temporary program.
Yep.
Part of this is because when we were having initial conversations, we want to make sure that we have the ability, obviously, for this program to meet the needs of agencies for temporary staff. But it also occurred to us that the increases in the reliance on this can also have detrimental impacts. Wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about that because some of the questions I had were on what are the differences, if any, between salary for some of these teammates versus temporary teammate salaries. Why is it growing? Why is the demand growing? And should we be concerned about the demand for temporary staff growing if we need basic services? We need continuity and that sustained growth of staff for agencies and for work. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to some of that and also just why is this happening?
Yeah. Great questions. Those are questions we're asking ourselves as we're looking at evaluating the long-term viability of this program, which probably from an administration perspective merits some more study. So here's what I would say. First of all, what does this get used for? I would say 3 primary use cases. The first is filling a gapped role. So John Doe leaves, retires or find another opportunity. Agency anticipates it might be 3 or 4 months before the role is filled. They want, some temporary resource to be able to perform the work so that they can continue to run their operation. So that's kind of use case number 1. Use case number 2, and we see this in state government more than I anticipated when I got here, is just managing the ebbs and flows of work. And many of our agencies, there's a lot of seasonality in the work. And so the SOS program is a vehicle for agencies where they don't necessarily have an enduring need, but they have a temporary need. And that mitigates against hiring somebody that would be in a permanent role, and then you need to do a RIF if that doesn't continue. And then relatedly, the third use case would be grants. So a grant might be for, a defined period of time. You can't be assured that the role will exist, that whatever work is happening against that grant, you can't be assured that work will endure if the grant doesn't continue. And so the SOS program is a good resource for that. In terms of, I think your first question was just, hey, why? I don't see it really since, I think utilization has been mostly consistent. And so I haven't really seen a increase in this. Certainly post-pandemic, haven't seen an increase in this. The utilization has, has been high. I think it's used a lot, but it's been a sustained high rate of use. So not a lot of where we see seasonal variability, but not year-over-year variability. Why we're spending, why that budgetary pressure is raising gets to your second question, which is just what's the compensation like? These teammates are in the same classifications that regular full-time teammates are. And so the pay band is exactly the same. So there's no arbitrage advantage.
Benefits too?
I'm sorry?
Benefits too?
I don't think they have benefits coverage. That's something I can follow up up with you on. But from a wage perspective, there's no disparity. I can get back with you about what the exact benefits differential is.
That'd be helpful.
Yep.
And then the other thing, if you can follow up with us on is, it's helpful to hear that the utilization is consistent. It would be helpful if you have numbers on the sort of month by month, like what is, like how long are we, like what is a temp? Like, is this really like 3 months? Is this, to your example, gap roll makes sense, seasonality makes sense, but do we have some people in this temp role that have been doing it for a year? Or is that really unique? Why would that be the case? Getting some of those numbers would be helpful to.
And it's not uncommon to see people at a year when we're talking about that grant use case in particular. But I can absolutely follow up with you about like what is the average time in role within this program. That'd be my pleasure to follow up with you on.
And for full transparency, the reason why I'm asking is if we're appropriating the funds for an agency that's coming in and asking us for something, but we end up having somebody for 6 months that is unfilled and we appropriated for benefits, for the PSL, for the funding for it, it's a real big mismatch for us.
Yep.
I just want us to be accurate.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clements, and thank you for being here. I
Yes, sir.
know past few years haven't been the best to sit in that chair when you've been in front of us, and I really appreciate this chart or see where we've come from where we were in 2020. Thank you to you and your staff and everybody who put a lot of work into this, and appreciative to hear your comments that you said you're not done and you're still looking at other things.
Yes, sir.
Mine goes back, and I forgot to bring the book along. We got the 2 books that detail every state agency or whatever. And in the DAS, main part of yours is made up in revolving funds.
Yes, sir.
And in the 4 years that they have numbers in there, we had quite an up and down, probably over 50, 60 million in those. Some of it I could relate to COVID, but this last year now we've had an increase in, I call it the revolving part of that budget. Any reason why, or you just commented on that you're trying to make sure that you don't have more than, I think, 25 or 50% of a year's worth in the ending balance? Are you looking at that real close all the time, or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, if you had a particular fund you were particularly concerned about, I could probably dive into some detail.
It was a whole agency's revolving fund.
Okay.
And basically you
Yeah.
you set the rates for many of our other agencies that comes in, and then, it's dispersed out as needed.
Yep.
But this was the whole agency's fund, and 2-3 years ago during COVID, it was way down, and I didn't know if that was, because of not having staff or whatever. This past year, though, that increased by over 40 million. The revolving fund number did. And I'm just looking at that page, so I don't know all of those things either. So
I'll recheck the numbers, but that would be at odds with my expectations, Senator. And certainly that's not my frame of reference. And I wonder if maybe OCIO funds and some other funds that aren't directly managing might be swept into that. It could be, but just again, as a matter of general principle, I put and this is admittedly arbitrary, but I put a ceiling at 180 days of operating fund for any fund balance. I never want to exceed that. If I exceed that, that's my red flag that we need to be lowering rates or otherwise providing more value for customers. And then on the floor, we get into cash flow problems if we fall below 60 days of operating fund. And so that's what I kind of use. And if both of those figures are arbitrary, it's just an aid to judgment to say, hey, are we in a healthy spot? And then, a couple of instances I can think of where there's been exceptions where that ceiling has been exceeded in recent months or in the past year. The task force for 309, the state building renewal fund, that's a fund that is dedicated to basically, the renewal of antiquated buildings within our real estate portfolio. So think about your boiler goes out, for your HVAC system. This fund comes in and replaces that for instance. And what we're seeing in that fund in particular is, I think in terms of just labor shortages or difficulty getting contracts on the civilian in the marketplace that are doing that type of work, it's almost tough to get the projects happening fast enough. And so that's when we're taking a close look at, hey, are we at the right fund balance? Is there more we can do? Then the other one I would say is state accounting. And of course, we've had the Workday implementation. We've had these investments in resources. We're bringing on a new software system to aid our accounting operations in the coming year. And always looking at our rates there to make sure that's right. We believe that's consistent with the committee's preferences with respect to our focus on accounting operations specifically. So that's another area where we've been, maybe at the precipice of that 180-day fund balance.
I'll try and visit with you more.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I just want to make a comment for you. The fiscal agent says that the indemnification fund has increased, went up by $18 million, which, would you want to describe the indemnification fund? It's like,
That's within our state insurance portfolio. And so that would be paying claims against the state within, tort liability and other things
that's
like
what I
that.
thought. That
Yeah.
would be one large item that I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm speculating a little bit, but I suspect that's the state patrol trooper settlement.
Oh.
So that could be what went into that spot. I can verify that, but that might be what you're seeing, sir. Is that, yeah.
I'm seeing heads nodding.
Okay, we got there. Sorry that it was a long.
Senator Armendariz, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
Yep.
Director, for being here.
Yep.
One thing that stuck out in your testimony was the insurance rates are going up.
Mhm.
Did the insurance carriers give you, two questions, did the insurance carriers give you a reason for the rate hikes? And is the state doing something to reach into our insurance all the time? And is there some efficiencies or changes that need to be made so that we're not reaching into it? And question number 2 is, have you negotiated with those insurance companies to give credits or rebates for non-use of the policy in 1 year? Because I know that they will negotiate those as well.
Great question. I think we could probably look at that closer. Generally speaking, so is in terms of losses the state's experience that probably are contributing to the plumbing failure at the state penitentiary was a massive financial liability that the state incurred that our insurance had to come in and come alongside us and cover. So that's a very atypical example of a catastrophic loss, but it is one that we've recently experienced that might have contributed to that. A typical loss in our program would be like hail damage that hits our vehicle fleet. And, you have 500 cars.
Which is random, but
Right,
the
yeah.
plumbing would be a preventative thing that we missed, things like that.
I don't know
Are
how,
they doing
I mean, it's an
preventative
120-year-old facility. So I think it's more just, it probably more reflects that facility is a massive liability within our insurance portfolio that, until that facility is off the books, we'll just have to be really cognizant of the risk exposure there that we have to any infrastructure failure. But to your question, Senator, I think we could probably do more to just look at, what are we doing within our RFPs for our insurance coverage? Are there opportunities for rebates? Are there more things that we can do for favorable pricing? Frankly, I'm probably not close enough to the work to say everything that's happening there, so I can follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions, Senator Dover?
Oh, I just want to echo Senator Dorn's statement that just thank you for the improvement, Director Jackson. It's much, much appreciated.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Chairman.
will invite other agency representatives to come forward now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Mark Neiman, M-A-R-K-N-E-E-M-A-N-N. I am the Interim Chief Information Officer for the state of Nebraska. And I appear here before you to testify on behalf of the Department of Administrative Services Office of the Chief Information Officer. The OCIO is currently in the process of not billing for its program 172, which is IMS services. As a result, our customer agencies will cumulatively experience cost savings of close to $30 million in fiscal year 2024 In conjunction with this, OCIO has identified specific rates for mainframe usage and various types of storage. We are able to reduce by 35% once billing resumes towards the end of fiscal year 2024 and will continue into fiscal year 2025. The customer agency savings for the reduced billing rates will be worked on in the weeks to come. Agencies now have received their first month no bills in Program 172 for their assistance in the budgeting process for fiscal years 26 and 27. We will be providing them with their savings from these months of no bills in Program 172. In addition, agencies will continue to have access to bills they receive prior to and after the no bill. This will assist them in understanding what their total expenses would have been for fiscal year 2024. In the coming weeks, the OCIO will begin our rate setting process for the upcoming fiscal year 26 and 27 biennium. Throughout the rate setting process, our goal is to effectively set our rates through accurate cost identification, awareness of impact on our customers, and recovering only what is necessary to satisfy OCIO's incurred expenses. A major component of this rate setting process will continue to be the effective collaboration with our customer agency partners. Thank you for your time today. Lee Will of the State Budget Division in the Department of Administrative Services will follow and give more details on the rates and how they impact the state budget.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Will, come forward.
Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee, my name is Lee Will, Leewill, and I'm the State Budget Administrator for the state of Nebraska. I'm here today to provide a brief overview of the recommendation for the adjustments to OCIO rates and the related impact on the state budget. As Mark indicated, OCIO rates are established on a 2-year basis and published alongside the biennial budget instructions. These are calculated considering utilization, existing fund balance, and projected revenue from assessed rates to ensure available cash flow and appropriation is sufficient for the OCIO to meet the IT services needs of agencies statewide. Following the conclusion of FY23, the fund balance for the OCIO's Information Management Services Fund balance had grown to $35.9 million by October 2023. The OCIO has partnered with our office to right-size and realign its resources. As a result, the OCIO will provide reimbursements to agencies and significant budget reductions. The total rate reduction for FY24 is $31.3 million and $12.2 million in 25. This allows for a total of over $14 million in general fund savings. This realignment will stabilize the fund balance around $16 million, which supports the right amount of cash flow at 25% of the annual operating budget. The intention was to front load these savings as much as possible so revenue generated can be nearly flat to allow for a sufficient fund balance that is less volatile. This will provide agencies more certainty in the future when budgeting for OCIO expenses. I want to acknowledge the work of Noah Finland, CFO of the OCIO, and the rest of the OCIO team in delivering these reductions. Shortly, we will begin the process for the next biennial rate setting exercise by involving the agencies on the front end of the process to better inform anticipated utilization costs. This will provide better certainty to the agencies and OCIO to ensure the right amount of funding is available at the right time to provide necessary services. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Other questions? I'll just ask, we've noticed a lot of OCIO adjustments in all these the various agencies that we've been reviewing.
Sir.
And we have been wondering why that has. And did you say OCIO had a $35 million fund balance, excess funds?
Yeah, it was about $36 million in total. And about 25% of expenditures off the top of my head is around $14 to $15 million. So there's about a $20 million buffer in there that was, not necessary. So the intention was to flatten the rates as much as possible in this current year and then provide stable amount of funding in 25 and beyond. So in the next biennial period, 26, 27, we don't have significant rate hikes. It can be pretty balanced and pretty flat in the future.
So the $14 million general fund reduction is in fiscal year 24,
That's the total for the biennial period.
for 24, 25.
Yes, correct.
All right. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you for that explanation. That
Thanks, sir.
let's clear that question up.
Appreciate it.
Is there any other testifiers regarding the Department of Administrative Services budget? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Appropriations Committee. My name is Brett Doherty. I am the interim administrator for the Office of the Capital Commission. I am here to testify in support of the governor's recommendation.
Would you spell your name, please?
Oh, sorry. Brett, B-R-E-T-T, Doherty, D-A-U-G-H-E-R-T-Y. So I'm here to, in support of what the governor's recommended for our budget. And that's all I really have.
Are there any questions from the committee? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there any other agency representatives? Seeing none, is anyone else wanting to testify on the Department of Administrative Services budget? Seeing none, that concludes Agency 65. Next, we'll welcome Agency 91, Tourism Commission. Good afternoon. Thank you for visiting.
Good afternoon, Senator Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is John Ricks, and excuse my voice, I have a cold. I ordered a new one. It was not delivered in time today, so we're just gonna have to do with this. My name is John Ricks, J-O-H-N-R-I-C-K-S, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska Tourism Commission, also known as Visit Nebraska. I'm here today to strongly encourage you to grant our request for a spending authority increase from the current level of about 7.5 million to 10.5 million. But first, I have a housekeeping item I want to cover, then I'll introduce some new information to help justify some of our spending authority increase request. First, the housekeeping. The Honestly campaign tagline that was once in our promotion efforts is a thing of the past. We know the slogan stirred some controversy. Back in August, we decided to move away from it and have, and will. You won't see it again. Bottom line is the tagline's gone. So, but now what we're concentrating on is how we can continue the tremendous momentum from numerous consecutive years of record-setting tourism growth in terms of visitor spending, visitation, and the lodging tax that funds our cash basis agency. I'm not going to take the time to go through all the details today, but by the end of the week, you'll each receive our 23 annual report, and you can go through it there. But top line, we want you to understand that tourism in Nebraska is a revenue generator. 4.3 billion flowed into tourism, hospitality businesses, and other kinds of businesses throughout the state in 2023. A recent advertising effectiveness study that we commissioned reports that since 2019, the likelihood of people to visit the state jumped, it more than doubled from about 17 to 39%. Awareness, in other words, are we on people's shopping list? Do they know Nebraska exists? That jumped to 40% from actually around 5% before 2019. And perceptions of people in our out-of-state markets have changed from they perceiving that this is kind of the land of nothing to do to things like
This is a destination for people with a sense of adventure, a place that has most to offer those who like to explore, has a place that has, contrary to nothing, it's a place that has lots to see and do. And most interestingly, it's a place with unique and distinct experiences. These are all really plus signs moving forward. Further, and of bottom line importance, is that we've now found that every marketing dollar invested by Visit Nebraska in 2023 generated an average of about $20.28 in visitor spending. This visitor spending supports tourism and hospitality businesses, large and small, across the state and creates jobs in communities throughout Nebraska. It also generates state and local taxes totaling hundreds of millions of dollars that also support local communities and improves quality of life here. So how does this all relate to our request for a spending authority increase? Our success in bringing record numbers of visitors to Nebraska has resulted in record lodging tax growth that is basically actually outpacing our spending authority. By allowing the commission to increase the spending authority consistent with projected lodging tax revenues, you will allow us to reinvest lodging tax revenue back into our efforts to promote Nebraska as a tourism destination. This would go a long way in helping to maintain and could even help increase the momentum that we've built over the past few years. We've just started to plan our 2024 efforts, and we may have to forego promotion in Chicago and Oklahoma City. Those are our two best performing new markets without having a spending authority increase. This would really be unfortunate because it would just keep from generating tens of millions of dollars coming into the state in the future. Visit Nebraska needs access to every dollar possible to market the state as a premier vacation destination. We're having great success and like to think that we're waking a sleeping giant of an industry here. However, it's a very competitive marketplace, and our bordering states have promotion budgets that frankly dwarf ours. In fact, for 2023, our office budget of about $7.4 million was less than half of the $15.9 million of our neighbors, and our promotion budget is around $6 million, was just over half of our bordering states. Finally, I've handed out a sheet with the Tourism Commission's amended budget request for fiscal 24-25. We put this together with guidance from the Legislative Fiscal Office. As you'll see, it does exactly what I've discussed here today. Adding the additional $3 million from our cash fund into the budget. Additionally, it adds language, again recommended by the Fiscal Office, that mirrors a number of other state agencies operating off of estimated receipts that would allow our budget to adapt to the future market conditions based on the size of the tourism cash fund. Thank you for your time today, and now I'll do my best to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Further questions, Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you for coming today.
Yes, sir.
You made a comment about our budget is about half of the other states' budgets. Can you give me a reference which states that might be, or all of them, or what is it?
Yeah, there's a sheet on your kit. U.S. Travel annually does a survey of budgets, and the last numbers they produced were for 22, 23, and it's in here. And rather than talk nationally, we just talk bordering states. The average U.S. budget is 28.5 million, and for marketing is about 19.6 million. But for bordering, Wyoming, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, South Dakota, those are what we consider our bordering states, and the budget numbers are there.
I see that. Looks like we outpaced Kansas by quite a ways, right?
Yeah, Kansas is the end.
Have you any idea how much hunting and outdoor activities such as hunting and fishing bring to the state?
I do not. I mean, I think Game and Parks would, yeah.
Because my thought was this: Game and Parks has restricted the number of permits that they're allowing for out-of-state hunting, and that's a great opportunity for tourism, especially turkey hunting in the spring. And I'm concerned that we've lost out because we don't manage our wildlife like we should, so we don't have the opportunity to offer permits.
And I just wondered if you knew what that loss was.
Yeah, we don't track that. I think that what I do know is that the good news is we keep bringing more and more people here. Nebraska, when I started here 7 years ago, wow. It's pretty much an unknown. Awareness of Nebraska as a state is growing. So last year we brought about 12.3 million overnight visitors and about 6.7 day trippers. And those could be doing anything, hunting, anything. So we're at 19 point some million people coming, and we can increase that with increased budget, first of all, but I think getting the spending authority will allow us to, basically do what we did last year, and then hopefully bring in more.
Thank you.
Question.
Senator Wishart?
Just following up from Senator Erdman, why isn't that tracked from the tourism perspective, just hunting and fishing? I'd imagine that in this region, if you look at Wyoming, South Dakota, some of the other states, that is a large portion of who's coming to Nebraska is for the outdoor experience.
I agree with you. Now, Nebraska is perceived as an outdoor destination, if you will. I think that, we meet with game and parks all the time. We meet with them monthly. So don't think that's not being done. I know Roger Kuhn is on our board and has been for many years. It's a significant portion. We could probably look at our annual visitor expenditures that's done by Dean Runyon and Associates and see if they can peel out or define that better. We can check into that, certainly.
Other questions? Senator Armendariz?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I have two questions again. So you say that we have an increase in the lodging tax, correct? The income from that? Do you track people from out of town staying in our hotels, and how much of a percentage of that are people outside of Nebraska in the hotels? And then the second question, and I should have prepared you for this ahead of time. So you're asking for an increase in your spending authority so that you can promote Nebraska as a premier vacation destination.
Correct.
How do you anticipate you would do that?
Okay.
Obviously, they've already mentioned the hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
So
I
you
think-
must have an idea of how
Yeah, and I think you might have heard me say this before. We need more eyeballs. Where we advertise right now is a very limited market, basically here in the upper Midwest. Last year, we were able to add in Chicago and Oklahoma City. The more households we reach and communicate with, that will increase those likelihood to visit numbers, and the people will come.
I understand that part, but the premier vacation destination, how are you promoting that we are the premier vacation destination? To those eyeballs that you're trying to reach.
I think in our messaging, we talk about a lot of different things. And rather than, tell people this is the greatest thing on earth, what we do is say, here's what we have, here's the variety of things we do, and let them make the decision. And that's why that campaign was different. Let the people make up their mind, and it worked. So we're going to keep going that, but I'm working on that for sure. But at the same time, I don't underestimate the power of simple awareness. U.gov did a survey a couple of years ago that simply asked people, where have you ever been in the United States? They didn't ask about reason, wedding, funeral, anything like that. They just said, where have you ever been? And Nebraska was down in the bottom 4. Under 20% of the people have ever been here. So don't underestimate the value of just simple awareness and getting on people's vacation lists. And I don't mean to oversimplify it because it's not simple, but don't underestimate that.
And then also, did you track the lodging from outside of the state?
Dean
So like
Runyon
I
is- yes,
stay in
the-
Lincoln,
Dean Runyon- the 4.3 billion is travelers, okay? If you looked at the the gross sales in the hospitality industry by NAICS codes, it's about a 5 point, it's another billion more. So that's people in Lincoln going to dinner in Lincoln or Omaha going to dinner. So they go through and they call and they define that tourist and they pull that out. I would guess that I don't know the exact percentage, but most of but I can check it for you. I'll get it to you. It's tough because it's hard to go through and figure out because they put different criteria on it. Some people use 50 miles away from home with an overnight as a traveler. And I'll check with Rania. We can
I'm
define.
looking for money from a different state coming into our
Oh,
state,
okay.
using our tourist dollars for people to come in and visit.
Most of it is that way.
Okay.
And
Can you
I'll work with Rania to define that for you. I get that to you. Yeah.
Senator Dover?
Yeah, I just kind of piggyback on Senator Erdman's questions. Where would I go to find out how much money came into our state based on hunting and fishing?
Let me talk to the folks at Game and Parks.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a huge number. I mean, that's a huge number.
It's a big number.
Yeah, and yeah, that would be, if you could get back to, I guess, anybody that would be interested.
Yeah, okay.
Like, that's one of the things we have to offer here. And to Senator Erdman's point, I mean, really needs to be managed so that, because it affects all the communities across our state in a big way, and the small ones too. It's a great benefit. The second question I had was, and so in your testimony, Director Ricks, you stated that the likelihood of people in our target market to visit more than doubled from 17% to 39% awareness, and jumped from 40 to 55% prior to 2019. So my question is, that's the likelihood of people to our target market, of the awareness part. But where's the number that shows what is the actual number of people that did go beyond that awareness and actually came here?
Okay. Excuse me. And we don't have this up on our site yet, but the ad effectiveness study will be out there and how they calculate it.
Okay.
Because we just got it in October, and we're still culling through it, but that information is in there.
Yeah, and it may be not the focus of this study, but I'm sure you track that
Yeah,
on an
it's
annual basis.
yes, it's I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but the survey is a large one. It's over a sample of 4,000, so we could read, and you'll see that on your sheet about ROI, that we can read ROI between different destinations, so the sample sizes have to be big, and there's a whole litany of questions we ask. Yeah.
So if you could get that would be wonderful
Okay.
also. Thank you, Director Ricks.
Senator Levin?
On your graph, your rate of return on the far left, you have for every $1 spent on Nebraska advertising, it yields a return of $27.19. So my question would be regarding statistics. For instance, the kids come back from Chicago to visit grandma and grandpa. That's one instance. Another one is that they're drawn in because they see an advertisement for Nebraska. They think, gee whiz, that looks like a great place to go to. How do you make that differentiation? I think of Winston Churchill, who says, I only believe in statistics that I doctored myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will be up there. The way it's surveyed is that the 27% is for Chicago. It's $27 is for Chicago. There's a whole structure and methodology that has been developed over the years in destination marketing, where they go in unaided, which when the survey starts, they don't even know you're talking about Nebraska. And they just ask about advertising you've seen. And then the people they talk about Nebraska, then they dig down deeper. Then they start aided. And then they get down to questions like, did this force you, not force it, did this cause you to do something? And there's all kinds of things like visit the website, go on a newsletter, sign up for whatever, and actually go. So it's all filtered through this to come up with those numbers.
Thank you. Other questions? I had one that was talking to a fiscal analyst, and it appears that your last year ending 2023 cash balance was $5.6 million and that your 2023 revenues were $7.8 million. You're expecting more than $7.8 million in revenue of lodging tax in 20?
Yeah, we do those projections semi-annually now. The projection for fiscal 20, for 23-24 is 8.6. And then the next year is 9.05, excuse me. So, again, the more people we reach, the more revenue you're gonna have.
So if you increase your spending to 10.5 million, you're going to be spending down your cash balance some with less than 10 million of revenues, right?
I didn't understand the question.
You're asking us to increase your spending to $10.5 million per year.
Yep.
You're taking in 8 or 9 million, so you'll need to get the other million from your cash balance. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, what we want to try to do is, the only reason we were able to go to Chicago last year at all in Oklahoma City is because we had a CARES Act grant, $1.2 million. That got us there. And how that surplus, that excess built up was because during the pandemic year, we didn't spend a nickel. There was no reason to invite people when they didn't want to leave their house, you know. But there's no way for us to get at that money. So it's sitting there right now. It's already in the account. So for the next couple of years, if we have access to those funds, we can keep pounding on Chicago is what it is, because we've only been there once. And you keep pounding on a market that side, you're gonna get some pretty good visitation.
So you mentioned 2 cities that this will expand you to. One is Chicago.
One is Chicago and Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Chicago's the big one because just the number of households and the number of people there, it increased our household reach by about 50%. So again, the more people you reach, the more people we make aware of, the more people we get on their shopping list, the more people are going to come.
All right. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Excuse my voice again.
Are there other testifiers regarding the Tourism Commission? Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Grateful there's already been a Winston Churchill reference today. So, yeah. Good afternoon, members. My name is David Fudge, DAVIDFUDGE. I represent the Nebraska Travel Association. We're a group of industry folks that represent Nebraska's 3rd largest industry. I've also been asked to say that the Nebraska Hospitality Association endorses this testimony. In my day job, I'm the executive director of Nebraska Land Days out in North Platte. The Travel Association and the NHA together urge your support of Nebraska Tourism's request for additional spending authority for 2024 so we can continue the growth that we've had at record pace over the last couple of years. With the additional authority the Commission is seeking, that growth will accelerate. Fulfilling the Commission's request does not require raising taxes, nor does it require rating the general fund for any funding whatsoever. In fact, the Commission is already collecting more revenue than they are allowed to spend to promote Nebraska. That's in large part due to the steady increases in the number of visitors coming to our great state. We've seen record or near record collections since July of 2022. We see that as proof positive that the Commission's mission of drawing visitors to Nebraska is not only working, but working very well. As you've heard from Director Ricks, the increase in spending authority will allow Nebraska to push its promotion to a greater audience. It will bring more eyes to our state and hopefully more dollars to our state. We've been surprised by recent calls for the Commission to be rolled back into DED. NEDA and the NHA believe such a move would be a large leap backwards. It was just over 10 years ago when this legislature made the decision to establish the Tourism Commission as an independent agency. At that time, it was taken out of DED. Promoting Nebraska as a tourist destination had become lost in the larger bureaucracy of DED. When this legislature created the commission as an independent agency, statistically, Nebraska was dead last in the nation when it came to where prospective travelers wanted to visit. We are finally moving up the list of places that vacation planners are looking at. The commission's budget request will allow us to continue that progress forward. Before I conclude, I'd like to comment on the Honestly Not for Everybody campaign. The industry understands the different points of view on the campaign. In our mind, there's no reason for a marketing campaign to divide the state unexpectedly as it did. NEDA and the NHA believe the campaign's lifetime is over. We've pressed the commission on this, and we're pleased to have received assurances that, in the commission words, the slogan is a thing of the past. We're further encouraged by the commission's active work on a new marketing campaign. It is especially important for us that the commission is actively collaborating with DED. On behalf of NEDA and the NHA, we urge you to approve this commission's request. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there additional testifiers regarding the Tourism Commission? Seeing none, that will conclude Agency 91. The next item, after this, we'll be switching to bills. The next item is LB 1210, and I'll turn that over to Vice Chair Wishart.
Well, welcome, Chairman Clements. And this opens the hearing for LB 1210.
Thank you. There's a handout the page is bringing you that we'll get to in a little bit. Thank you, Vice Chair Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. I am Senator Rob Clements, ROB-CLEMENTS. I represent Legislative District 2. I'm here to introduce Legislative Bill 1210. The purpose is, last session I brought LB 812 to fund a project to construct a rotunda gallery on the 5th floor during Phase 5 of the Capitol Heating and Air Project. The estimated cost of the project request was $3.4 million. The committee funded around 45% of that estimate with $1.5 million, which has not been spent. The 5th floor is one of the Capitol's hidden in plain sight features that the public is sadly not currently allowed to access. LB 1210 aims to provide additional funding to this project in the amount of $1,500,000 additional from the cash reserve one time to ensure it moves forward in coordination with Phase 5 of the Capitol HVAC project. When complete, this renovation will help provide the public with an opportunity for a unique and up-close 360-degree view of the Rotunda Dome through the circle of French marble columns, as well as a bird's eye view of the 2nd and 3rd levels of the Rotunda space below. It will also provide a large new space in the Capitol for a public exhibition gallery to present information about the history and function of Nebraska government for students and the visiting public. Available photos of the original members of the bicameral legislature could also be presented, similar to the photos of the unicameral members currently on display in the 1st floor hallway. The current situation is this. As a reminder, the 5th floor is currently unused because it opens into the rotunda and cannot be secured against objects that might fall into the rotunda from the ledge between the columns. The project will solve this problem by installing transparent viewing windows. Some interesting history for context. The 5th floor was intended to be a 360-degree public viewing level by architect Bertram Goodhue during the original building design and construction 100 years ago. State personnel had offices on the 5th floor for 20 years, ending in 1976. However, the last time the 5th floor was publicly opened was from 1982 to 1986 in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Capitol being built. This unique space has not been utilized for more than 35 years. The design and construction of the 5th floor Rotunda Gallery will preserve the historic character of the Capitol as well as ensuring public safety. It will also ensure compatibility with the current HVAC project as it ascends the tower. Finally, savings should be realized as Sampson Construction, already on site for the tower HVAC remodel, could be subcontracted by the architecture firm. The Nebraska Association of State Legislators has offered to assist with funding through private donations as well. I have invited former state senators from the association as well as design and construction team members to follow me to testify and answer questions. At this time, would you please turn to the handout? The first page shows an estimate that was done December of 2022. And I have not requested an update. That is where the $3.389 million number comes from. If you go to the next page, shows you the beautiful columns up there on the 5th floor surrounding the rotunda opening. The next page is, you can see a ramp going down with a platform that's built up. The idea would be to have that platform go around so that visitors would be at the level, standing at the base of the columns rather than about 4 feet below the columns, because they would not be able to have much visibility. So that platform would go all the way around a walkway. And that, then you can see why glass panels would be needed to prevent falling between the columns. Then the next picture shows you what it looks like up there currently, which is in disrepair. Next picture shows the paint coming off of the ceiling. The next picture shows an old steam heat register. So the heating and air does need to be installed there, and as it goes up the tower, I'm in favor of doing that, but would like to coordinate that. You'll see a window then. There is a window that opens in onto a rooftop. I am being told that the state fire marshal has concerns about only having one stairway exit from the floor, and possible that we could incorporate an egress window there to provide a second exit if that's really required. The question is whether we're grandfathered after 100 years or not. Finally, then there's a picture just from my cell phone of the rotunda ceiling with the different virtues, wisdom, faith, and justice. That's not zoomed in. That's how close you would be to the ceiling there. It's beautiful. Next picture shows looking down to the rotunda floor. And leaning over there is a little bit iffy. I was careful. And recently, there's a newspaper article that appeared in the Lincoln Journal and the Nebraska Examiner also. So I thank you for consideration of LB 1210. I'll try to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Chair. Any questions? Senator Lippincott?
Once this is completed, will there be different things to look at, read, museum things, history, posters and all that up there?
Yes, that's not in the funding here, but the one proposal is there are north, south, east, and west, 4 different directions. And 4 displays could be a display of the history of the Capitol building, then the history of the governor's office, history of the legislature, history of the Supreme Court. Would accommodate museum displays. And the former state senators, that was the part they were interested in working on, that proposal. But this would just be doing the platform and the windows so that it could be a possible space for visitors.
Any additional questions? Senator Dover?
Secretary Clements, I remember that at one time they said that they may use it for events. Do you know if there's still any plans to be able to hold events up there?
No, I haven't heard of any plans. It's too preliminary to know what would be done there.
All right, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm assuming you're here to close.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. We'll now open up to proponents for LB 1210. Hi, good afternoon.
Hello. My name is former Senator Vicki McDonald, VICKIE MCDONALD, and I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Association of Former State Legislators, and I'm appearing in support of LB 1210 on behalf of the association. As you have heard and read, there is an unused area behind the columns that support the dome in the rotunda. That space, the fifth floor, is unusable in its present form. The fifth floor is not, however, an unusable space. As Senator Clements has said, it can be adapted and made into an exhibit and learning area. The exhibits could also provide content and meaning for the 8 great winged figures representing wisdom, courage, faith, hope, and charity. The space could also accommodate exhibits concerning the history of the Capitol, the legislature, the courts, and the executive branch. Last year, you supported an initial appropriation. Now, please continue your support of Senator Clements' vision. And as far as the association's purpose in fundraising, I know we were able to fundraise for the landscaping of the gardens, and then also money to have set aside in perpetuity. We have not taken a position how much, because we're not a fundraising organization, but we probably would be interested in doing something with the exhibits. And hopefully, as you become former state senators, you help us in that endeavor. I'll be looking for you to join the organization when your term limited out.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Additional proponents? Well, hi, it's good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Bob Ripley. I am a recently retired administrator for the Office of the Capital Commission.
Spell your name. Spell your name.
Yes, indeed. Bob, or B-O-B, Ripley, R-I-P-L-E-Y. I can use all the help I can get, I assure you. I'm here today to enthusiastically support this measure. And I thank the former legislators and most specifically Senator Clements for the support of this project. I see it truly as an investment in the youth of our state. It is a magnificent location in the building, and I, during my 40 plus years working at the Capitol and working under 8 separate governors, I had the opportunity to take a number of groups through the building. And invariably, when I walk into the rotunda, one of the first questions out of people's mouth is, hey, what are those columns up there and how do I get there? And I have unfortunately had to say to people, I'm sorry, that's an area that's not open to the public. It was for a very brief time, as the senator said, from 82 to 86, I believe, at the 50th anniversary. We're now at the 100th anniversary of the construction of the Capitol, not quite to the completion. But this is an opportunity that I have dreamt about for many, many years. When the former legislators came to me during my time as administrator, I said, thank heaven, finally, we may be able to get this moving. And sure enough, thanks to all those I've mentioned, we have. It is not only an incredibly impressive overlook of the rotunda floor, which was part of the original design of this building when it was first constructed in the 1920s, essentially, but it provides the opportunity that is of equal measure, in fact, more lasting benefit to the state by having roughly on an average, 100,000 tourists come to this building in a given year. I would pit this building against most any other single building in the region, not just the state, in terms of drawing people in. Speaking of travel and tourism, people who come into the Capitol oftentimes are heads on pillows and meals at restaurants, and it is a draw unto itself. This location, as proposed, and by the way, we have members of the design team and Sampson Construction who's doing the ongoing HVAC work here in the building. So if you need specific, they're in the room here today. If you need specific detail, they would be available should you have such questions. But the chance to, out of that 100,000 average number of visitors in the Capitol every year, 30,000 approximately of them are fourth graders that are here to see the biggest bulges in the legislative session, from usually February, March each year through the end of the school year in June usually. 30,000 fourth graders coming here to learn about Nebraska history, of which this building is the finest three-dimensional representation of a history book of the culture of Nebraska that I could possibly imagine. And our tour guides customize their tours to coordinate with the State Department of Education's section on Nebraska history. So if there's an opportunity to augment those, what they're learning in the classroom when they come to the Capitol, I see the opportunity for the exhibits on 5th floor to do just the same thing. Not only be a great destination for kids who naturally walk in, look up, and with what's planned in the current 5th floor renovation, they would see people standing at that level, looking out between the columns. So it would be even greater draw for anyone coming into the building, much less a fourth grader, to want to go to that level and see. Once they're there, the view is one thing, but the ongoing benefit is these long-standing and a permanent location for all three branches of government to have exhibits to talk about what government does, to help educate students as well as any visitor to the state, and as well an opportunity for the various archival material we have collected in the Office of the Capitol Commission that tells the story of how the building was designed, constructed, and is being preserved. All we've been able to do up to this point are intermittent short-term exhibits. You see them on 1st floor. The tour staff will put them up. Roxanne Smith is great at doing that. And other branches of government can do short-term. This would be an installation that would be there ongoing, day in and day out, for whoever is here, whether it's during the school year for the fourth graders or it's for the general public beyond. So I thank the senator. I thank the former legislators. I'm very enthusiastic about completing this. The only part of the Capitol that I know of, we've gotten all the others into use, but this is the only floor in the Capitol designed for public access that isn't available to the public, and it hasn't been since 1986. So it's time to get it back into circulation. It's time to make it the kind of natural draw and destination that I know it will become, because people have had that kind of interest for my tenure in government. Now, I'll stop talking and give you an opportunity to ask questions if you have any. I hope I can answer.
Senator Dorn.
Thank you, Chairman Wishart, and thank you for being here.
Of course.
Figured you're a good one to ask. Senator Clements passed out here. I call it the breakdown of all the costs of this. And remember last year when we had discussion about this, and I don't remember which senator, maybe Senator Clements will remember, somebody talked about, well, they should be able to do this for half as much. And when you look at the construction costs, they could, and stuff or whatever. But I guess explain, you're probably more familiar with this than the rest of us are. There's two lines in here and they're both contingency. There's one 220,000 in the construction cost, and then there's 677,000 down here in the bottom for an overall contingency. Go in, explain that contingency and why that is included here.
If it were a year ago, I could do it with my eyes closed. But as I alluded to, I'm former administrator. However, there are those in the room.
Yes, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
There are those in the room who are very familiar with the current costs. And so what I would do is defer to them and their expertise. The Sampson Construction is a representative here today. They've been our contractor from the very start of the HVAC work, doing wonderful work in the building, getting that done. Doing this work in fifth phase will save the state a lot of money versus completing HVAC and coming back 5 years from now. It will add considerable cost to remobilize, bring people in, and then we may not have a contractor with the level of experience that Sampson has doing the work. And the architect and the engineer involved in this work as well are here. So I'm going to leave this cost estimate here and ask one of them to come
Okay.
forward.
Any other questions?
Yes, excuse me.
Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, your concern over public parking is not a recent concern.
Yes.
It dates to 1974 when I first worked for state government. So it's 50 years.
Thank you. Next proponent, and Paige, one of the pages, can we make sure that he has a green sheet?
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Worth, DANWORTH, and I'm a retired architect with the firm, or formerly with the firm of Ballard Hacker Architects. I was project manager at the time. The master plan was done with BVH, and since my retirement, I've been assisting the formers with this proposed project and helping them in any way I can. Also with me today is Paul Baumann with Alvine Engineering, who is the HVAC design consultant, and also Ben Richter with Sampson Construction, who could probably answer some of the questions regarding the cost estimates. Last year, we gave a neutral testimony regarding the project and gave you quite a bit of detail about the ins and outs of the project. And I won't, in the interest of time, I won't go through that today. I think you've heard quite a bit about it and the benefits of it. I would like to point out, I think it's been mentioned, that the window is closing on the timing of being able to incorporate the fifth floor project with the larger HVAC project. The design team is in the midst of designing the fifth and final phase of the HVAC project, and that will, of course, begin very soon. So the timing of this appropriation and the completion of the detailed design documents is in perfect alignment right now. So, if there's delays, we'll probably miss that. So with that, I'll close and entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
I'd ask that question.
Additional proponents?
Ben Richter, BenRichter, Senior Project Manager with Sampson Construction. So it looks like I got deferred for the budget questions here. So I was the project manager on the main HVAC and window project. I've since moved into a more senior role at the company, but I did put together the cost estimate from the construction side here with help of BDH for the main estimate. So the question about contingency and why it's kind of doubled up on there. All the drawings we've had today were very preliminary. Still working through final design, including the discussion with the fire marshal. So a lot of that contingency was just if the fire marshal was requesting X item, that we had some money set aside to take care of that. We took care of it both on the construction side and then also on the design side if they came up with anything additional that was needed as well. So
Is some of that, oh, sorry. That's a question.
Yep.
Sorry. Thank you, Senator Worcester. Thank you for being here. Is some of that also an estimated increase in cost, providing it won't be done till probably 25 or so.
Correct. So yes, we also had a cost escalation line item in there as well. So knowing how coming through the pandemic and all that, knowing percentages and costs were, escalating at the time, we were trying to use our best judgment on what we would expect to be when we actually get to that portion of the project. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional proponents?
Hello, Vice Chair Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Heidi Ewing, Heidiuhing. I'm here as Public Policy Director for an organization called Civic Nebraska. We bring several students through this building all year long who have an interest in learning more about our unique form of government and how they can participate in it. We also bring several adult groups through, and it's a wonderful opportunity to really focus on what happens here in the building. We'd really hate for students to come through this building and really the beauty of the building is so distracting that it's easy for them to, I think, leave with the impression of just it being this beautiful museum and not really focus on what it is that we do here and why it's really relevant beyond just being absolutely gorgeous. So I've been to the 5th floor. It is a stunning space. I'm sure many of you have seen it also. My thoughts go out to whoever gets vertigo easily from that space, because I think that that might not be the best spot for them to go visit, but for everybody else, I think this funding is an opportunity to really focus on our unique form of government here. And right now we really have no physical representation of that in the building beyond just, people being able to observe it themselves or hear about it from a tour guide. And people learn in different ways. So having exhibits that could really focus on this and tell the story of how we were this, we were a bicameral system, and this is the story of how we became a one-house legislature. I think those of us who are the beneficiaries of this form of government can take it for granted. And the truth is, it's incredibly unusual. We're the only state in the country that does this. And it's a real gift to Nebraskans to have this system of government to enjoy. So we are all for any opportunity to better educate people about that, and for Nebraskans to really be able to absorb and appreciate that gift that they are inheriting as Nebraskans. So we thank you for considering this, for your previous support of funding for this project, and we're all for anything that is needed to get it done.
Thank you, Heidi. Any questions? Seeing none, thanks. Any additional proponents? Anyone in opposition to LB 1210? Anyone here in neutral capacity?
Thank you, Chairwoman, and the Appropriations Committee. My name again is Brett Doherty, BRETT-DAU-GHERTY, and I am the interim capital administrator, here to testify in a neutral capacity, maybe more to answer some of the questions about where we're at in the process and what we've done since you gave us $1.5 million last year. So we've had several meetings. Once we get the $1.5 million, we're trying to incorporate where we can be moving ahead with the $1.5 million. So we've had some meetings with our consultants, and then we met with the fire marshal last September. He was less than enthused about what we were planning at that time. We had some discussions about how we could move forward. So we sent our consultants back to come up with some ideas on what we could do to meet some of his concerns that he had. So they came up with a few options. We did meet with the fire marshal last week, presented those options to him, and we're just waiting to hear back on which one would be acceptable and which direction he would like us to proceed with. We did ask our consultants to at least get started on a schematic design to see how far we could go with the initial $1.5 million. If that's all we've got, Our goal is to at least get the backbone of the system in while we're there. This will be quite the process as we migrate into the tower as far as getting our well-filled water and our refrigerants and everything into the building. So we don't want to miss that opportunity to at least get the backbone of the system in and go as far as we can go with $1.5 million. So,
Thank you. And I apologize. Did you spell your name?
yes, I did.
Okay, great.
I did it the first time, but
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
thank you.
Any additional neutral testifiers? Okay, seeing none. Chair, would you like to close? The chair waives closing, and that closes the hearing for LB 1210. Oh, excuse me, it does not. We have actually one additional proponent representing the American Institute of Architects that provided a position comment in support, 0 opponents and 0 neutral. That closes the hearing for LB 1210.
That will bring us to 3 bills that are very closely related. LB 1090, LB 1275, and LB 1378. All are going to be with a similar subject of radio communications. And so we will start, we'll have the 3 introducers introduce their bills, and then we'll have proponents regarding all 3, opponents and neutral. So we'll start with Senator Ballard. We'll open the hearing for LB 1090, 1275, and 1378 as a combination. Welcome, Senator Ballard.
Thank you, Chair Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Bo Ballard. For the record, that is Beau Ballard, and I represent District 21 in Northwest Lincoln in Northern Lancaster County. I'm here today to open up on LB 1090. LB 1090 provides needed funding to ensure that Nebraska volunteer firefighters have the radio equipment and training they need to protect our rural residents and their property from an increased threat of fire. The bill mitigates interoperability issues by appropriating additional dollars to the Nebraska Public Safety Communication System and bolstering local investment through the establishment of a 1-to-1 grant program. Grants be used to provide mobile radio programming and installation of radios, as well as other equipments. The total appropriation under LB 1090 is $5 million, and grants are capped at a single applicant of $3.5 million. For context, there are 17 rural fire districts within Lancaster County that utilize county radio system infrastructure. The initial system, implemented over 15 years ago, was funded by a grant with no ongoing funded stream available. Since that time it was installed, the equipment has aged and fallen out of manufacturer support. According to a study commissioned by Lancaster County, options for addressing the outdated system included replacing with the new equipment but similar technology, upgrading the existing system with improved features, or joining one of the regional's P25 digital trunk systems, such as the state radio system, Omaha Regional Network, and the City of Lincoln Trunks radio system. Each of these options have its own challenges and prices involved in the county rural fire district. What is certain is that first responders in Lancaster and other counties investing in the interoperability deserve the support from the state. The recent fires in the fall of 2022 have brought the needed modernization and communication to the forefront in a dangerous way. Almost 300 responders stepped up and helped to contain the wildfires in Lancaster County. While Lincoln, Lancaster, and the surrounding counties work well together, they are limited by outdated communication systems. The stories about these radio systems that find their way into the news are usually undramatic ones. They are less visible and the impact of poorly performing systems that have day-to-day operations of these public safety agencies and the frustration they cause among personnel who rely on them. Outdated radio systems risk the safety in firefighters and hinder their ability to do their job effectively. Our emergency first responders deserve a robust support as they serve communities, and ensuring interoperability takes a step forward in delivering on this goal. I will be happy to take any questions, but I am going to be followed by some rural firefighters and Lancaster County Commissioners.
Further questions? Well, I'm not sure where to proceed. Is there a representative for Senator Brewer or?
I saw him here earlier. I saw him here earlier, but Senator Dover.
Citizens and General Affairs.
I think we'll go with Senator Dover next. Senator Brewer is not.
I think he has a bill up in General Affairs.
Sorry.
Welcome, Senator Dover.
Thank you, Chairman Clements. Thank you, Chairman Clements, and good afternoon, committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Dover, ROBERT-DOVER. I represent District 19, which consists of Madison County and the southern half of Pierce County. I've introduced LB 1378 to help obtain funding for volunteer fire departments. LB 1378 takes the interest off the 9/11 Service System Fund. There are some concerns expressed to me, so I'm currently working with the governor's office to locate a new and different source of funding. I will give an example why this is necessary for my own district. Recently, I became aware that Madison County was able to obtain radios for all first responder services and did so through ARPA funding. Pierce County also used ARPA funding, but prioritized the sheriff's department, and the police departments in Pierce County was unable to fund the fire. In conversation with the volunteer fire departments in Pierce, they shared at that time they would physically be able to see another and yet unable to communicate by radio. Our first responders need equipment that's reliable in emergency situations so they can care for people and do their job effectively. I have great respect for the courage, dedication, and sacrifice of our first responders, and I will do all that I can to support them. I have a complicated situation in my district where cities with an automatic aid agreement are in two different counties. Automatic aid is where one department will automatically cover for another department's area when they're on a call. One county has updated radio and equipment, and the other does not, which makes communication a challenge. My goal is for volunteer fire departments to receive funding to purchase radios that will enable them to communicate with one another with our emergency service personnel. Thank you for your time. I'll answer any questions that I can.
Any questions for Senator Dover? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a representative for Senator Brewer Senator Brewer?
It's kind of weird when you have multiple. I guess I'll sit here for Brewer.
We have three bills that are all regarding the communication system. So we're doing opening for all three bills, and then we'll have people testify on all of them. So welcome, Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Chairman Clements, and good afternoon, fellow senators of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Senator Tom Brewer, spelled Tombrewer, and I represent 11 counties of the 43rd Legislative District of Western and Central Nebraska. I'm here today to introduce LB 1275 on behalf of Nebraska's volunteer fire departments. LB 1275 will appropriate $22.7 million from general fund for FY 2024-2025 to the Department of Administrative Services Office for the Chief Information Officer. Funding would be used to provide portable and mobile radios to volunteer fire departments across the state of Nebraska so that they would be able to have interoperative communications with public safety communications statewide radio systems, referred to as SRS. Today, a very limited number of our 400 plus volunteer fire departments across the state have radios and access to connect through the SRS, which means that they have limited capability upon arrival on scenes to have communications with local law enforcement through the SRS system. The passing of this initiative would allow all of our volunteer fire departments to arrive on scene during mutual aid scenarios with radio compatibility and communication with public safety agencies across the statewide radio system, SRS. Public safety agencies will have the ability to better respond and assist with disasters throughout the entire state of Nebraska, keeping our citizens and first responders safe. What is SRS? The state
Nebraska statewide radio system is a collective partnership between the state of Nebraska, Chief Information Officer, and the State of Nebraska Public Power Districts, NPPD. These partners jointly built and funded this project through an interlocal agreement by building one statewide shared radio system instead of two separate systems. By doing this, they saved an estimated $20 million. The SRS became fully operational in 2010. It connects 213 entities together to enable direct communications. When necessary, the SRS provides communications between first responders to protect public safety in Nebraska. Among the 213 entities of the SRS are 15 state agencies, including Nebraska State Patrol, Nebraska Emergency Management, Nebraska Department of Transportation, 82 local law enforcement agencies, 31 local emergency management agencies, 16 federal agencies, including the FBI, 27 fire rescue and ambulances. The volunteer fire departments are critical to our rural communities. There are very few of these volunteer departments that have been equipped with the SRS emergency systems, and we feel this is critical. That is why LB 1275 has been introduced. There are a number of testifiers who will follow me that will give you more background on the information. The passing of LB 511 in 2023 allocated $5 million for equipment and services for about 175 plus volunteer fire departments in the state. We have printouts of a map where those departments that receive radios are located. We have spoken to multiple fire departments, which some of you may hear from today, and talked to them about the impact that the SRS has made on them and their operations. I've also spoken to various departments who applied to receive radios and were not able to receive radios in phase one of the building of these systems. We'll be asking for your support for 1275 to ensure that we have communications on the SRS system. Subject to your questions, that concludes my opening, and I will pass these out. This is just a breakout again of where all the radios went in the first round of distribution. So with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Other questions? Who handled the distribution of the funds? Do you know?
That's a good question. Sarah McDonald, can you help me on that one? For the radios for the fire departments, the rural fires?
Went through the,
We'll find that out.
OCIO.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Is your understanding that the 5 million is completely spent?
That is my understanding. They spent until they had a zero balance in order to field systems for the existing rural fire. And you'll see in there by county how they were distributed numerically.
And your handout says the OCIO will administer the program.
Okay, there you go. That's why we have handouts.
You already answered the question. I'm being advised that there were more applications than there were funds.
Yes.
So I'm sure it is.
That's why we have the delta here, the difference.
Other questions from Senator Dover?
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer this question, but in Madison County, they received 1 and Pierce received 3. Is that because Madison County used their ARPA funds to buy radios for everyone? You know?
No, I mean, at that level, I'm not sure how a department decided to buy radios. That's just a breakout of who got them, and a lot of that depends on who applied, when they applied. It wasn't necessarily first come, first served, because it was a pretty broad casting, because, you know, even far west got radios, just not the number to sufficiently equip the departments across the entire district.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
On the way we're doing it here, will there be a close, or are we done for now?
You may close if you like, but It's up to you, Senator Dover.
I have another question. It might be for
Senator Dover, you're a presenter.
Well, I didn't know where to say because he's presenting right now. So I present. I'm not questioning my bill, but I'm presenting here. So I figured I have a right to ask him a question when
On
he's
his
presenting
bill?
his bill.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. But it's kind of confusing to me too. But I wanted to be able to. I don't know if this is for you or for someone else. Do you know how many counties actually took their ARPA funds and purchased radios for the fire or EMS?
I was more on the radio side of it, not on the ARPA side of it to understand who took money, but I can probably try and quickly find out before.
No, in my understanding, I talked to a county commissioner in Madison County, and he said that they took their ARPA funds and purchased for everyone at EMS. We talked to Pierce, and it sounded as though they funded the sheriffs and the police all in the county, but weren't able to fund the fire. They figured, and the reason was, of course, when you're police, they shoot at you, and when you're in fire, there's danger there, but they're not shooting. The fire's not shooting back at you, so they spent their funds there.
Yeah, I can't tell you who went with police and rescue as opposed to fire. That I was just focused on the fire part of it. So
right.
We'll see if I can find out.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator. We'll now welcome proponents for either 1090, 1275, or 1378. Please step forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. My name is Justin Scamihorn, JUSTIN SCAMEHORN. I'm here on behalf of the Waco Volunteer Fire Department, who did receive one of the radios last year with the grant money. We're very appreciative of that money and the grant or the radio. The impact it's going to make for us. About 7 years ago, we were called to interstate to help York Fire. Sorry, it was a really bad day. That call started off just a mutual aid, go help them out on the interstate. A couple slide offs in the ditch, wasn't anything real big. Unfortunately, it was a blizzard out that day, kind of like we had a couple weeks ago. The conditions deteriorated, and as more and more slide offs happened and more accidents happened, we did not have the ability to talk to the state patrol, who I could see behind me, and say, hey, you need to stop traffic, you need to slow traffic down. Didn't have that ability. We can't talk to them. The only way we can talk to them is through our dispatch center, which is us radio them. They get back to us. We give them a message. They radio State Patrol. State Patrol responds to them. It's time consuming. Had we had the radios back then, we probably wouldn't have lost a fire truck. Our ambulance wouldn't have been destroyed. And 3 people wouldn't have been sent to the hospital. 1 life-threatening, 2 critical. All because we couldn't talk to the guy 100 yards behind us. Moving forward, we have that capability now. We have 1 radio, which would be in the 1 truck that goes to every accident call we have on the interstate. And with that radio, we are allowed to talk to the State Patrol, who I can see, but previously couldn't talk to. Now we're allowed to talk to them and say, hey, I know you can't see us anymore because the conditions have deteriorated, but we really need to slow traffic down up here. It's not just 2 or 3 cars now. It's a couple semis, it's several cars, and maybe we wouldn't lose another fire truck. I'm not saying that the state radio would have helped back then, but it sure would have hurt. It would have helped a lot to be able to talk to even the Department of Roads and let them know what was going on back then. So I do thank you for the funding last year, and I do encourage you to keep funding this project so that more and more volunteer departments can get those radios. You're gonna hear other people talk about wildland fires and huge area responses, but it's just important for those of us that don't respond to huge areas. Waco won't respond to a 100-acre grass fire. We won't ever use it for that kind of condition, but it is vital for us to be able to talk to State Patrol, deputies, Department of Roads, other people out there on the interstate with us. So with that, I'll conclude and let everybody else talk about their situations.
Are there questions from the committee? I missed what department you're with?
Waco Volunteer Fire Department.
Waco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your testimony. Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Kenny Krause, Kennykrause. I am here representing the Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association and the Nebraska State Fire Chiefs Association. I'm here to testify in support of all three of these bills that would help local fire departments acquire radios. I'm currently serving as the Fire Chief of Fairbury Rural Fire Department, which is located in Jefferson County in southeast Nebraska, and also as District Director of the NFCFA. The Fairbury Rural Fire Department has become very proactive and reactive fire department in recent years. We've obtained training that is somewhat outside the box for our response area, but has been beneficial in our response area as well. By this, I mean wildland fire training. I'm here to tell you about a fire that we'd experienced beginning on the day of April 11th, 2023. The fire actually started on the evening of the 10th with a very small land management burn when an ember left the burn unit. The next morning, the fire rekindled and quickly grew to 1,800 acres. Which is unheard of in our area of the state. Because of our training and responses that we've made in other areas of the state, we knew how to react after we exhausted our local resources and initiated a statewide response. This response included 56 fire departments, 10 state and federal agencies, 4 local businesses, and 7 county agencies. I served as a division leader and then eventually as incident command. With this many agencies on the ground, radio communications were difficult. One of our requests for equipment after the governor's emergency declaration was a cache of radios. The reason for this ask was to give us a common link between incident command and the field division leaders. They would have also given us the ability to communicate with the Nebraska State Fire Marshals and the Nebraska State Patrol drone teams, as well as any medical helicopter that may have been needed. Also, a statewide radio in our response vehicle that travels outside our own response area would have been helpful in the days earlier at the Wakanda fire and the Votah Road fire in 2022. And we responded even earlier to the Post fire in Crawford, Nebraska in September of 21. The radios in our vehicles were not compatible with the systems they were using. With the types of fires and responses in recent years, it's time for us to find a common ground with communications for these types of incidents. Again, I support the legislation that would help us attain these radios. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Well, thank you for being here and thanks for your service to our state. I mean, ideally, would it make sense to have every single fire department volunteer across the state on one statewide radio system?
There's probably others in the room that could answer the frequency
Okay.
things better that would help divide that up. But I think what we need is the capability when we arrive in different regions to make that connection with the departments that we were going to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So years ago, fire departments ran on a frequency of 39.9, and no matter where you went, it was 39.9. So, but that day is long gone.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? You said you're from Fairbury. Do you have the radio that communicates with the system?
No, we do not. Forgot to mention that. We do not have statewide radios down there, and I don't know of anyone in our mutual aid that does.
I have a bill up in another committee.
Oh.
Vice Chair Wishart will take over.
Any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Wishart, members of the Appropriations Committee. Committee. My name is Michael Dwyer, Michael-Dwyer, and I'm here to testify in support of all three of these bills, 1090, 275, and 1378. I'm testifying also on behalf of the Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association. And we would like to thank Senator Ballard, Senator Brewer, and Senator Dover, if I have this correct. I'm trying to read my scribbles, for all three of the bills. I, too, am not quite used to testifying. Two quick things before I start. One, yes, I would appreciate a lot more parking. At the moment, I'm parked about 6 blocks away and paying for parking, so thank you. Two, I earlier this morning emailed all of the offices of this committee with this report on EMS. If you have any questions about that now or later, I would be happy to answer those. That will be important relating to my testimony and going forward. I'm a 40-year veteran of Arlington Fire and Rescue, 2,600 plus calls, and served many of those calls as a command officer. At the risk of stating the obvious, communication on an emergency event is critical. Without it, you can't get information, you can't direct resources and ask for more resources, and you can't push the proverbial panic button to let everyone know that a responder is down. Radios are the tool that supports that communication. In the event of any significant event, which of course all of ours are, everyone on the scene must communicate across bands, channels, and agencies quickly and clearly. 9/11 taught us that. The 2019 floods taught us that. The wildland fires of 2022 that you just heard about taught us that. And one of the worst calls of my career on December 28th reminded me of that. At about 6 p.m. on the 28th, I and members of 7 other agencies responded to a 2-vehicle accident. One of the vehicles was fully involved, and in 7 minutes, I went from helping my wife with dinner to what I can only describe as a war zone. I later learned the victim was a community icon, a former employee, and a dear friend. Communication that evening was really difficult, but really good. Largely because most of us had radios. While our county lost an icon and a friend to so many, we also saved 2 lives that night. However, communication for any event are always rationed based on the incident command system and the ability of whether or not each of us has radios. Limiting first responders' ability to effectively communicate. I don't frankly understand why Nebraska doesn't ask NSP or sheriff's deputies or police officers or emergency management or the Department of Roads to consider working without radios, and yet volunteer fire and EMS that, by the way, saves the state an estimated $500 million a year in labor alone, has to continually come here and beg. I understand the ask is a significant one. As a fiscal conservative, I get it. However, public safety is one of the few truly essential functions of government. And I would remind this committee that the framework of volunteer fire and EMS that protects the people, the land, the communities, the highways, and the state parks of 78% of Nebraska is protected by volunteers who can use and will utilize all that help we can get. I would appreciate your support for all 3 bills, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? So I have one. Following up my question to the previous testifier, just trying to understand, is there an opportunity for there to be a system that is completely statewide in which different volunteer entities can connect to it, whether it's the same radio system or not, so that we're not sort of patchworking this, but that everybody can connect to one system regardless of where they are?
The simple answer is yes. The simple answer is, in my world, maybe I've been doing this too long, but yes, absolutely. That would be the end game. The situation that Kenny described just a moment ago is a good example of that. The one that I had just 4 weeks ago is a good example of that. It's just really, I don't know how to say it anywhere else. It's just really important for us to be able to say, hey, I need this. At the incident on the 28th, I was literally doing hand signals, 3 minutes, and helicopter, and because I don't have a radio to talk. Did we still make it work and save 2 lives? Absolutely. But it's not perfect. Now, with that said, it's not quite as simple as even all 3 of these bills. There's a lot of integration and operability that even if we have all the equipment, will take us a little while to do. But if your question is, would that be a good end game? Absolutely.
Okay.
And Exhibit A would be NSP or the Department of Roads that, as I understand, can do that now. Maybe I've been, again, doing this too long, but what we do is kind of important, and I think that would be an obvious thing to want to work toward. It doesn't happen overnight, I get that.
And with this system, would it be ideal to be able to connect to Department of Roads and other public safety divisions as well?
But sure. So like refer to the 28th again. We had NSP, county sheriff, four different fire departments, two of us on different systems, radio systems, as well as the Department of Roads and a towing record system that was there as well. The Department of Roads was involved because we had Highway 30 shut down for 4 hours, 5 hours, something like that. Interestingly enough, the next morning we had what we love to call Pigmageddon. We had a tractor trailer with hogs in the back of it that went down on Highway 30. And the response to that was much easier than it was the night before, but the highway was closed for 7.5 hours or so. And Department of Roads was a huge part of that. But we can't, other than, hey, I can't pick up a radio and tell them I have to go through a deputy to dispatch who calls someone on a landline and says, hey. That answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Good.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thanks for being here. And
Right,
thanks
thank
for your
you.
service. Next proponents. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is John Bomar, JOHN-BOMAR. I am the District Group Director of the Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association covering Northeast Nebraska, portion of the state, and I reside in Ballard, Nebraska, where I am a member of the volunteer department and have served as a volunteer firefighter for over 45 years. Actually, this year in January, I started my 47th year. I am testifying in support of all three bills this afternoon, which would provide funding to supply radios to volunteer fire and rescue departments. For many years, and more so over the last 10 to 15 years, volunteer departments have been faced with critical issues of not being able to communicate on the scene with other departments providing mutual aids. This issue has escalated most recently in mutual aids in arriving on the scene from not just the departments in the region where the emergency is taking place, but departments coming from other areas of the state to assist in very large emergencies. There are other will be testifying already, have testified as to the distance some departments have traveled over to assist other departments. In my position as a regional director for the Association of Northeast part of the state, the association and in its past leadership position as president of the association, during our conferences, training weekends, and other department functions, and a fire school held each year in Grand Island, we are made aware of communication barriers presented by that are unavailable to be used to communicate with others. Those others includes at times other volunteer departments, state patrol, EMS, air support, helicopters and airplanes, and others depending on the emergency. When finances are necessary to pay for fuel, insurance, gear to outfit our volunteers and supply equipment to volunteers and EMS in Nebraska, and those that support them, like fire districts, municipalities, are unable to raise sufficient funds for radio capability of communicating with other fields. For those reasons, we ask you to include funding this year to supply additional volunteer departments with radios. Finally, thank you, Senator Brewer and Senator McDonald, and to this committee for your work last year in the legislature introduced by Senator Brewer and included by this committee in the midline budget appropriation $5 million for radio supplies to volunteer departments. This has been a great first push in supplying radios to volunteer departments, and I want to make sure I thank you all for your effort and hope the committee is able to act again this year. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for being here. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon, Senator Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Rick Vest, spelled R-I-C-K-V-E-S-T. I'm appearing before the committee in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners. I am here to testify on behalf of the County Board in support of LB 1090, but actually in support of all three bills. Rural fire departments are essential to the safety of Lancaster County. The rural fire department volunteers who serve our community represent the best of Lancaster County. They selflessly put themselves in harm's way to protect their friends, neighbors, and the general public. Their dedication and commitment to public service is unmatched. However, all of our volunteers' bravery and sacrifice cannot overcome the funding gap that exists for critical communications equipment. Our volunteers are working with aging radios that operate on an obsolete network that is at the very end of its useful life and can no longer be maintained. The communication challenges that arose during the October 2022 wildfire that ravaged southern Lancaster County served to highlight the need for new radio equipment. Actually, departments responding to the fire could not talk to one another over their radios at the most critical times. To address this significant need, the county board has committed to investing $500,000 of its American Rescue Plan allocation to update the radio system for its rural fire departments, including funding a study to explore interagency operability of rural fire departments that respond within Lancaster County. That study demonstrated that the cost in Lancaster County to implement a new radio system would be somewhere between $1.48 million and $9.15 million. This is the cost for rural fire departments in Lancaster County alone. Lancaster County understands that funding for radios for rural fire departments primarily is a local need. However, it is a local need that has regional and statewide implications for the firefighting system as a whole. Fires do not respect boundaries, and rural fire departments routinely honor mutual aid agreements to respond to incidents in neighboring counties. Given the extraordinary costs of addressing the problems and the high stakes for statewide public safety, partnerships between localities and the state is needed. LB 1090 creates a grant program that would match on a one-to-one basis local political subdivisions' commitment to achieve interoperability with similar parameters as last year's initial appropriation. Lancaster County has already made an initial financial commitment in support of our firefighters, and this legislation would significantly increase our community's ability to address the time-sensitive public safety issue. We ask this committee to build upon the great work that you accomplished last year to fund the most critical needs of our rural fire departments, who are so vital to ensuring the public safety of our rural population. In addition, Lancaster County stands in support of related measures that have been introduced this session, including Senator Brewer's LB 1275 and Senator Dover's LB 1378. We thank Senator Ballard, Senator Brewer, Senator Dover, and this committee for your leadership on this important issue. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and for your service to our great state. I'm happy to answer any questions. They tell me I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jared Ritze, Jaredritze. I am with Malcolm Fire and Rescue here in Lancaster County. I'm also here unofficially with the Lancaster County Mutual Aid Association, who represents all the fire departments in Lancaster County and those outside of the county who respond into Lancaster County also. Here in support for LB 1090 specifically, but also the other two bills. Lancaster County Rural Fire Agencies are currently in the process of seeking a replacement radio system to replace our aging radio system, which is nearly 18 years old and becoming largely unsupported. In 2019 and 2020, we began investigating issues and concerns regarding our aging radio system, which is currently supported and maintained by the Lincoln Radio Shop for the city of Lincoln. In 2023, we worked with a consultant to evaluate our current system and potential options. We provided a number of different options with costs ranging from $5 to $10 million. However, the rural fire agencies do not have the budgets to even begin to fund these costs. We are beginning to look at funding options, but this grant opportunity in LB 1090 could provide us with a solid start moving to an alternate supported system. So systems that we are looking at include the state radio system, along with the city of Lincoln radio system and some conventional systems, which provide us with local and regional interoperability capacities. We just got to, I think everyone's kind of touched on all the events that have happened lately, but this kind of comes down to being a life safety issue. Our main concerns are coverage, interoperability, and of course, safety again. So we're kind of working again to move forward, but obviously with LB 1090, that would help us significantly or give us opportunity to help. And Malcolm, we were granted radios under the grant last year that will help us initially with our interoperability issues. But the more of that's out there, it's going to help everybody, including ourselves. But like you alluded to, Senator Wishart, the more firefighters that have radios that can interop between departments, the better. So that's kind of what we're looking for here in Lancaster County amongst our departments, is to put those in the hands of the more firefighters we can. So that is all. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none,
Thank
thanks
you.
for your service.
Good afternoon, members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Marlene Bomar, Marlene Bomar. I am representing the Nebraska Emergency Medical Service Association and the Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association. I am a volunteer firefighter and EMT on the Battle Creek Fire and Rescue. I am testifying in support of all three bills this afternoon, which would provide funding to supply radios to volunteer fire and rescue departments. NIMS's statewide membership is made up of licensed emergency medical responders, emergency medical technicians, advanced emergency medical technicians, and paramedics. NIMSA is very grateful to the senators for these bills to support the work of emergency medical services. We need to establish better radio communication between the departments and mutual aids on scene. EMS agencies are experiencing more calls and fewer volunteers. Our existing resources have not kept pace with Nebraska needs. Volunteer departments across the state are under-resourced. Any support to help provide the tools required to deliver life-saving emergency care to our community is appreciated. And I want to thank you for all your support.
Thank you for being here. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Johnson, ERICJOHNSON. I am here representing with two hats. I'm a 40-year volunteer firefighter with First Rural Fire in southeastern Lancaster and northeastern Gage. I also have been rural board president for over 20 years, and the budget constraints are horrible. We've been for 25 years plus under a 3.5% cap on what we could grow our budget. So we reached the unfortunate thing that Lincoln would no longer do transports for us, so we had to interrupt our whole plan, our physical plan, to go into the ambulance business. So all of a sudden, here we are, $125,000 behind the 8 ball to buy an old rig that needs to be replaced in the next couple of years. That new rig we have estimated at $300,000. Our budget doesn't allow for that kind of thing. So as far as radios, we just received word that we'll be receiving 2 of the statewide radios, 1 mobile and 1 handheld. Our department presently has 2 stations with 12 vehicles. There's radio in each one of those, and we have about 40 handhelds. 2 radios is a start, but it's a really small start. And we respond into Gage County, so I've been on calls with Myron. And so we have 2 radios in most of our trucks just so that we can communicate with the districts surrounding us. And I know that Adams has 2 radios so that when they come up into Lancaster, they can communicate with us. That's a horrible way of doing it. If we want to talk to the sheriff or anybody else, we have to have the dispatch center patch us through, which then ties up a radio channel. And communications is just so important. Heck, you've heard reference that fire in the southwest part of the county. There was a gentleman went down and the radio traffic was so severe that they couldn't get help to him. They wound up transporting him in a vehicle to meet an ambulance because the radio traffic was so heavy that they couldn't get the ambulance to him. So a new radio system in the county, Jared and a couple of others have mentioned the study that was done here in the county, and I served on a committee that helped put that together. There's over 500 radios in the departments in Lancaster County. So this is not just a small thing, it's a big thing. Because we don't know, depending on the call and what volunteers are available, what trucks are going to go. So only having a couple of radios in a department only marginally addresses the need. So as a board member, the thing that concerns me is in the statutes, 35-508 paragraph 7, or the director's powers or that I'm charged is to provide, to purchase or lease such firefighting and rescue equipment, supplies, and other real or personal property as necessary to carry out the general fire protection and rescue of the district. My hands are tied with money that I can't do that. So we need help. We need help desperately.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Any questions, Senator Dover?
Yeah. Is there any vehicle for overriding the 3% cap?
Yes, we did that last spring. We spent about $6,000 to have a vote by mail to increase our budget by $60,000. But we found that that's not going to be enough because the example is in June of 22, we ordered a new pumper. So we have 2 stations and we buy 1 new every 15 years. And of course, we had to rob the Capitol to get this ambulance in service. When we picked that truck up in September of this year, 15 months after it was ordered, that $462,000 truck, they told us if we had ordered it that day, would have been $150,000 more. 3.5% doesn't quite cover that kind of inflation. And constituents, I calculated, I think we're 6% of the property tax in the village of Panama where I live. And we had, I want to say it was 80-some% of the people that responded, which was only like 30% of the voters were in favor of it. But when we went to that, we said, we think this is going to get us so that in 15 years we can buy that next truck. But now we realize that next truck's going to cost over $1 million. And we've got a sinking fund that we keep adding to, but when I can only grow the budget 3.5%, I can't get there in 15 years.
Right. I was just wondering, and then what's the process for getting that vote again? You kind of were explaining that.
Well, it can be on a ballot, but the next ballot wouldn't be until this fall. So we felt last spring that we couldn't wait that long. So we actually did it a vote by mail, which, we had to do a resolution and all that. And then the election commissioner, and we had to pay I think we spent about $4,000 to get the ballots mailed and tabulated. And we had $1,000 for attorney fees to get the resolution written with all the wherefore and who fors. And so we spent about $6,000 to do that vote by mail.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank
Hi.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jason Whalen, JASON WHALEN. I'm the Fire Administrator for the City of Kearney, and I'm here to represent the Kearney Volunteer Fire Department and the Buffalo County Mutual Aid Association. Thank you for allowing me to testify today before the Appropriations Committee relative to LB 1275, 1090, and 1378. First off, I'd like to thank this committee for their support of the first round of the Volunteer Fire Department Radio Grant Project in 2023, which was able to fund approximately 172 volunteer fire departments across the state with the statewide radio system kits. I'm excited and looking forward to getting those radios into the hands of those departments to ensure that they have some means of interoperability. However, that still leaves at least 300 fire departments that have not received those radio kits. Ever since 9/11, interoperability has become a buzzword that continues to be one of the top issues facing our first responders and public safety officers. Interoperability is the ability to communicate across state and local agencies on demand and in real time. Interoperability is essential for our agencies to alert responders and commanding officers of immediate hazards and provide information to support decision-making as an incident commander or as a collective group in a unified command. This is particularly true in large-scale incidents, and as you know, no portion of Nebraska has been immune from those type of incidents, such as the massive wildfires and floods that we have experienced in recent years. Interoperability and communication issues are continuously mentioned by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health as contributing factors in firefighter line of duty deaths. Some of the communication issues often cited are lack of interoperability, lack of training, and equipment issues. These bills begin the process of covering all of those items. First, it gives operability and requires training and monthly testing of the equipment to ensure that the equipment functions properly and also ensures departments know how to use the equipment. Secondly, it places state-of-the-art radios that are rugged and specifically designed for firefighters into the hands of our volunteer firefighters who proudly serve our communities. I can tell you that I have had the opportunity to work with these radios, and they are game changers for on-scene firefighter communications. I believe that most communication failures in public safety and the fire service are both predictable and preventable. And I applaud Senator Brewer, Senator Ballard, and Senator Dover for introducing these bills so that every fire department in the state of Nebraska has at least the minimum equipment necessary to initiate successful communications and operations should such a major event occur in their fire district. Again, I thank you, all members of this committee, for allowing me to testify today on behalf of the Kearney Volunteer Fire Department and the Buffalo County Mutual Aid Association, and I ask that you support all three of these bills and fund the statewide radio kits for the remaining fire departments of our great state.
Thank you for being here. Any questions? Seeing none, thanks for your service.
Hello. Thank you for seeing me today. I'm Gary Shute, GarySchuett. I'm currently the fire chief for Hayter Volunteer Fire and Rescue. The SRS system would be dramatically helpful for my department, for one thing, and probably the state, because between departments, it is difficult to communicate once in a while, even with somebody as simple as another department, mutual aid department. We have a auto aid with Norfolk Fire. Right now, they are on the SRS. We are not. It makes it kind of difficult for us to communicate back and forth. Not only that, but our ability to reach to our dispatch center is limited now, very limited. So I guess I'd ask for your support for this bill. Thank you for seeing me today.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thanks for your service. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Tim Raggi, Timwragge. I'm Fire Chief for the City of Norfolk. Norfolk is a combined combination department. We have around 70 employees, part of which are full-time, work 24, 48 shifts, and the remainder are fire reserves that act much in the same capacity as a volunteer. I also serve on the Battle Creek Fire and Rescue Volunteer Department, 10 miles down the road from Norfolk, where my family and I reside. I'm hoping to offer a little bit different spin on this today. The crews that have already gone have done a phenomenal job. I get to see things from a couple different angles. I see the benefits that this system has to offer and the new radios have to offer on the statewide radio system. The City of Norfolk chose to go after this shortly after the flooding of 2019. It's made a drastic difference for us. And we're actually sitting right smack dab in the middle of an area where part of it is moved over to the SRS with the new radios and the other has not. As Chief Shute alluded to, they're just a few miles down the road from us, and any working structure fire that we have in Norfolk, Hayter is dispatched to. What it takes for us to access Hayter is the problem. We call our dispatch center in Norfolk, who is right across the street from our fire department, who then calls Pierce County, who then pages out Hayter. In return, Hayter gets into their apparatus, calls into Pierce County. Pierce County then relays to the City of Norfolk's dispatch center or Madison County Regional Dispatch, who then lets us know they're on the way, which is great, except for we can't talk to them when they're on the way because our radios are dissimilar. Over 20 years ago, after 9/11 happened, lots of radios were placed in the hands of firefighters across the state of Nebraska. The goal for that was interoperability at that time. We all had shared frequencies that were going to go into those radios, and it was a great step in the right direction. However, that infrastructure is antiquated and outdated, and it just doesn't work anymore. So what I would like to do is just give you a real quick example to kind of put yourself in our shoes. As I said, I live in Battle Creek. I'm fortunate enough that both Norfolk Fire Department and Battle Creek allow me to respond to different calls with each agency. We had a working structure fire in Battle Creek that I was first on scene with my Norfolk vehicle and my Norfolk radio, an SRS mobile radio inside that vehicle. I was able to communicate on the same frequency that Battle Creek Fire and Rescue would use, which is an older conventional frequency, in my vehicle. To dispatch in Norfolk, back to me, and so forth. Once I got out of my vehicle with my still statewide radio system handheld radio, I did a 360 around the fire. But because of current infrastructure, antennas and such, I was not able to communicate with dispatch anymore, nor could I communicate with the rigs that were coming in from Battle Creek that were only 8 blocks away. So instead, I had to get in and out of my vehicle in order to communicate with them, to give them pre-arrival instructions and allow them to know where hydrants were, those types of things. This is a common occurrence. A volunteer department right now in our region, aside from Madison County, who is gradually working their way into the statewide radio system, if they were to go on a call right now, leave their ambulance, go inside somebody's home with their portable radios, they could not talk to dispatch. And that is a massive problem. Contrary to popular belief, not everyone's happy to see firefighters and EMTs when you go on rescue calls. But we do our best. So when those things change, it's only fair to the men and women that make up the volunteer fire service to have the right tools in their toolbox. And that starts with communication. In fact, it starts and ends with communication. They're doing the same job that we are as full-time firefighters, and people have the same expectations of them. So I fully support each of these 3 bills that are geared towards making improvements across the state. I'm grateful to the opportunity to speak to each of you today. The calls are on the rise, and we're responding accordingly with a shorter number of people than we've had. So I would entertain any questions you might have for me.
Any questions? Senator Dorr?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
So talk about your department again. Norfolk is a full-time 24/7 paid department, but it also has, like Beatrice has, a rural fire with that, or?
Yes, sir. Yes, no, the way ours works is we do have the full-time staff. We have 10 per shift that work 24/48s. And then we have a group of 32 firefighters that have other full-time jobs. We run about 3,200 calls a year, and we have over 400 callbacks a year, meaning we have all of our staff that are on duty out on calls. So we send out pages for those additional staff that are off duty and those reserve firefighters to come in and help cover the next calls. Each time we do that, there's a potential to engage our mutual aid partners. We do that over 100 times a year where we call in our mutual aid partners that are all volunteer around us. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Other questions, Senator Lippincott?
The statewide radio system, SRS, what frequencies are they? Is it VHF? Is it FM?
Well, it's a digital frequency. I know there's folks here, especially the folks in back there from the OCIO that can speak to it more, but what I would compare it to, the old conventional frequencies like Madison or Battle Creek Fire use right now. It relies on line of sight with towers. And as long as you're outside in your vehicle with that mobile radio power, you can talk to the people that you need to. Once you leave the footprint of that vehicle and that mobile radio and take your handheld, there just isn't enough power in that handheld radio to go inside a structure. So this new digital frequencies allows for better building penetration and keeps distance. For example, I turned my handheld radio on in my personal vehicle all the way to Lincoln today. And I would say 96 to 7% of the time as I drove to Lincoln from Battle Creek, I could have keyed up my mic and called the fire station in Norfolk from that handheld radio. That's the difference in the power of that radio. The radios that Battle Creek was using before this and many other volunteer fire departments are, I couldn't have got a few miles from my house and done that same thing in Battle Creek. So.
Different frequencies for all these different areas?
So the frequency questions, Norfolk Fire runs, we have our own Fire Ops 1, 2, and 3. We do 99% of our business on our Fire Ops 1 frequency, which is on the statewide radio system. Madison County, for example, all 5 or so of the departments in Madison County that have gone onto the statewide radio system, they're each going to have their own primary frequency in their channels to use, but we're going to have the ability to change over to each other's if we have to go somewhere. If we call Madison Fire to come to Norfolk on a mutual aid, they can turn to our Fire Ops 1 because it's in that radio and they can communicate with us right away. Prior to that, in this system, it did not exist. We could not do that.
It's line of sight, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Dover?
I believe that, I think that, aren't you asking for the tri-band radios, which are UHF, VHF, and 800?
The radios would be a dual band radio for us. And the reason the dual band is so important when we got our radios is so that we could use the new statewide radio frequencies, but we also had the ability to talk on the old frequencies that currently exist in so many of our mutual aid partners. So we paid a lot more money to buy radios so that we could communicate with our partners. And it's still not desirable because the second we go away from our new statewide radio frequencies over to the old legacy frequencies, there's performance, it's subpar. And that's the challenge we run into. We can toggle over and try to talk to Gary and his team when they're coming from Hayter, which is less than 10 miles away. But if we're at the bottom of a hill, they will not hear us. It won't work.
All right, thank you, Chief Froggy.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Are there other proponents? Please step forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Clements. My name's Neil Miller, Neilmiller. I'm the Buffalo County Sheriff. I'm here today on behalf of the Nebraska Sheriff's Association, the Nebraska Police Chiefs Association, and the Police Officers Association of Nebraska. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to testify today before the Appropriations Committee relative to those 3 bills of LB 1275, 1378, and 1090. I had some prepared statements, but I thought I want to take my time to kind of explain some things. First of all, it's an unusual position because we are in support of all 3 bills. We are, however, in opposition to the funding piece of 1378 using 911 funds, and I've got a little prepared statement of why we're in opposition to that, but we do support these 3 bills. A lot of questions about frequencies, state radio system, interoperability, operability. It's a very complicated area. Most of the time, the fire departments know what they need to communicate with who they need to communicate with. The problem is that a lot of the time, they don't have the funding to do that. We're all aware that I've been to more than one pancake feed or a bake sale to help buy bunker gear for firemen. When you introduce the cost of an expensive radio, there's just no possible way for them to be able to afford to purchase that on their own. In Buffalo County, we used ARPA funds to fund the rural fire departments and volunteer radios so that they had devices that could talk onto the system. And let's talk about what is the system, because I think there's a lot of confusion about that, and they're all good questions, but there is the statewide radio system. And that's kind of the core or the brains of how this whole radio system works. Then you can be a subscriber to the state radio system, and basically you'll use the radio system the state put up, or you can be a partner. Buffalo County partnered with the state radio system and the Office of OCIO to put up our own infrastructure. So we're on 800 megahertz. The state radio system is on VHF. But the brains of the SRS allow those disparate frequencies to talk to each other. That's the beauty of the magic of using the SRS to combine the ability of radios from different systems to talk to each other on a bad day. So most of the time, the operability for the fire department's good. Some is not, but most of the time they're able to communicate with who they need to, but they need help buying subscriber units. Then there are those times where we have interoperability, and they need to communicate with another law enforcement agency, EMS, or another fire department that's not in the same band that they are. That's when we come into interoperability, and that's when the first round of funding last year helped get at least one device in as many fire departments as possible, so that when they went out and they had incident command, that one device could talk to everybody that was at the scene, whether that was deputy sheriffs, state patrol, EMS from another agency, or a different fire agency. This grant system allowed at least one device to 170 some agencies to be able to do that. As I say, what they're trying to do with these three bills is increase the amount of money that is available to them to have the ability to do that again, because they cannot afford to do that on their own. And so I think it's important to note that, again, who do they need to talk to? Well, I think they know who they need to talk to. They just need the funds to be able to buy the equipment to be able to do that. As far as the 911 portion, we currently, the 911 service system fund is used to pay for costs incurred on or behalf of the governing bodies for public safety to provide 911 services. These funds are critical for maintaining and improving the essential service of 911. Ensuring that it remains adequately funded and equipped to respond to emergencies efficiently. We're in the process of transforming the 911 system and how it is delivered by implementing next generation 911 services. This transition is approximately 75% complete and should be finished sometime in 2024. We continue to fund the legacy systems, but we need that money because even though there are some excess funds in there, we've been very conservative with that fund. If you look at our neighbors at Iowa, they ran out of money to pay bills and went for a while not to be able to pay for things. We don't want to be what Iowa was and not have the funds to pay for the cost of implementing the next generation 911 system. So I'd ask you to reconsider the funds and where they come from. But the law enforcement agencies of the state of Nebraska support these three bills, and we support our firefighters and EMT and EMS.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you for being here. Senator Dover has 1378, and he talked about early on there that he's looking for a different source of funding. He realizes that too. And I think that was your opposition to the source of funding. Yeah.
That is the only opposition that we have to this. We are so pleased that there are three bills because it shows the support that there is. We drastically need volunteer fire departments in this state, and they are losing numbers at a very high rate. And it's all of our responsibility to support them in any way that we can so that they're there for us when we need them.
Yeah. So just wanted to help clarify that.
Yeah. Other questions? Thank you for your testimony. Next proponent.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Candace Meredith, Candace MEREDITH. And I am the Deputy Director of the Nebraska Association of County Officials, otherwise known as NACO. Just quickly, I'm going to first talk about 1275. Absolutely, we support that allocation of that $23 million to support the initiative to enhance public safety and our emergency response capability to our communities. Our volunteer fire departments do play that crucial role in ensuring the safety and well-being of our citizens. So absolutely support that. And I just do want to just kind of bounce off of what Sheriff Miller was talking about on 1378. We are in support of this bill. However, the funding mechanism, which it sounds like, as Senator Dover, you're working on, was a concern with that 911 system fund. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Seeing none,
Right.
thank you for
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Next proponent. Anyone else as a proponent of any of the three bills? Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition? Please come forward. Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, Chairman Clements. Thank you for having me here today. Members of the Appropriations Committee, I am Commissioner Dan Watermeyer, spelled W-A-T-E-R-M-E-I-E-R. I represent the 1st District of the Nebraska Public Service Commission, and I'm here today on behalf of the Commission to provide testimony in opposition to only LB 1378. And I understand the conversation that Senator Dover, I appreciate your concern about where the funding is coming from. And as a past rescue squad member myself, it is hard for me to come up here and be opposed to a bill, but as a commission, it felt necessary to show what really we need to be on record of what's going on here with the commission. The Public Service Commission is a statewide authority that implements, coordinates, manages, maintains, and provides funding assistance to the 911 service system. The PSC is very supportive and appreciative of the people who work in public safety, answering and responding to calls of our citizens in need of emergency help. However, we oppose this bill because we do not believe it is an allowable use of 911 serviceable funds. The 911 Service System Fund is meant to provide funding for the development, the implementation, and operation of the 911 service system and to support 911 service through the 68 locally operated PSAPs across the state. This includes funding for implementation of the next generation 911 system, which the legislature previously chose not to fund with general funds in LB 938 in 2016 and LB 993 in 2018. The 911 Service System Fund is therefore the primary funding source for the 911 system. The fund also provides support for the legacy 911 system. The 911 Service System Fund consists of surcharge funds that are collected on each postpaid wireless line and a percentage of the cost for prepaid wireless services. The wireless surcharge rate for postpaid wireless is currently at the statutory limit of 70 cents per line per month, except for Douglas County, which has a statutory cap of 50 cents. Additionally, the prepaid rate is currently 1 percentage point of the purchase price for the prepaid services. The surcharge funds are collected by the carriers and remitted to the 911 Service System Fund. 911 surcharge funds are intended to be used to support the provisioning of 911 service. That means the equipment and services necessary to receive a 911 call from a caller in need to the public service answering point. Any use of a surcharge fund for other purposes could be considered a 911 fee diversion. Each year, the FCC gathers information from states on the uses of 911 fees and submits a report to Congress. Those states that are determined to have diverted 911 surcharge fees are identified as fee diverting states and may become ineligible for federal grants or program funds. The issue that previously had been addressed in Nebraska. In 2009, the question of transferring funds from the wireless fund was presented to the Nebraska AG for an opinion. The AG opined that transferring monies from the fund for purposes other than 911 could be considered a diversion. However, if only the prospective interest earned on the fund was transferred, the AG's office said it would be considered a non-diversion. The commission has worked with the local and state representatives to develop a funding model and rules regulating the use of 911 surcharge funds that benefit the operation of the 911 service system and the 68 operated PSAPs across the state. LB 1378 proposes to transfer an unknown amount of money for an unknown amount of time from the fund for a purpose that could be considered a fee diversion by the FCC and Congress. This would potentially include funds that have been credited to the fund balance. Such a transfer would disrupt the funding model that has been carefully developed over time by the Commission and the PSAPs. The Public Service Commission therefore encourages the committee not to advance LB 1378. I appreciate your time, and I would try to answer any questions if you think I can.
Other questions? Regarding this Attorney General opinion, prospective interest would mean future interest, but not interest credited previously.
It depends on if it had been allocated in the past. If it's still floating in the account, it probably could have been, but I think the interest has always been used up every year.
And there's been mention of next generation 911 system. Is that implemented or is still in process?
As Sheriff Miller mentioned, about 3/4 of that is ready to go. It's up to speed, and we're regionalized the states, and every region is being transferred. So we're really close to being done with that. And that's why we're really worried about making sure we have the funds to finish it all up.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your
Thank you, Senator.
testimony. Is there anyone here in opposition of one of the three bills? Are there any opponents? Seeing none, is anyone here in the neutral capacity? Please come forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Ranke from Lancaster County, and that's Connie and then Reinke. A little bit different concern. A nationwide emergency use network, FirstNet, is being used to connect our elections. This network was first created after 9/11, when you had difficulty communicating with the police and cellular bands. They were congested and clogged, so the government decided we needed to have a parallel network, and they partnered with AT&T. They tried to build this up across the whole country, but it was focused on the large metropolitan areas. So what they did in this nationwide emergency network, they created a preemptive where it would have priority in the areas where there wasn't the FirstNet availability. So you could have priority service from any phone. This first happened about 2017. And just before Barack Obama left office, his Department of Homeland Security head declared election systems as critical infrastructure. Some wondered if he was trying to federalize elections, but didn't understand how. I think the goal is designating them critical infrastructure. Now they had legal access to use this nationwide network. So you can make a phone call and you can connect to FirstNet, this emergency services. So now it's not just emergencies like fire, police, sheriffs. It's emergencies and elections. A group of researchers, including Dr. Bernard, reviewed a transcript from the EAC, that's the Election Assistance Commission. They're the federal bureaucracy that's in charge of making sure that election systems across the states and country are properly certified. This group is supposed to, provide policy guidance. As we talk about this nationwide emergency, at this EAC meeting in 2019, before anyone had ever heard of COVID, Daniel Ivy Soto, a senator from New Mexico, it's been written many articles about him accepting bribes and giving bribes and taking money from clients than acting on their behalf in the legislature. He mentioned at this meeting that they could get nationwide access if there was some type of emergency through FirstNet. They partner with the Center for Internet Security. This is related to our elections, and you may have heard of Albert sensors. These are the individuals that use the Albert sensors. So there has to have been a way centrally across the country when you saw 7 states counting all their counting stop at 10:30 at night, and people backfilling votes and setting up vans in the middle of the night. Georgia double scanning ballots. The concern is the same FirstNet are barcode scanners. And one of the documents I've given you is the Dallas County briefing court order. They were using barcode scans for mail-in ballots that were connected to FirstNet, this emergency service. So my concern, I hope you'll look at the documents that I presented. The elections are connected to the internet through this FirstNet. There's proof of that. And our major concern is the voter registration databases being connected to the internet. The scans as people are scanning in mail-in ballots, that they can tell how many Democrats, how many Republicans votes came in early. And then looking at the election machines, making sure a ratio is reached for the election. So this centralizing of elections and the centralizing of this emergency band is very concerning, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Seeing none, is there anyone else here in the neutral capacity? Welcome.
Hello. Amber Parker, AMBER, Parker, PARKER. I want to address, I'm testifying on neutral here on 1090. I didn't have time to read the other two, but I thank my friend for bringing to my attention. I first want to address the interoperability, cybersecurity, communication towers, radiation, and then tying together on the contract side. I believe that it's greatly important that we do support our first responders in communications. However, I do find it greatly troubling with a questionable past or what was brought forward to you by the previous testifier here on neutral, and understanding how this is the communications that connects pertaining to some troubling outcomes. I think it's greatly important with the focus here on communications with our first responders that they do have the tools that they need. What my concern is that we have an area of where there have been things hidden in the state legislature from the second house. And the question is this your way to use them in what they truly need, but to elevate and lift and push 5G in the state of Nebraska? To which what I want to address here, getting as your considerations here and at the forefront, we do need communications with our first responders. We do need to make sure they have that. but proposed what companies are there that don't have a pass that connect with elections. That needs to be completely separate and divided from our first responders. There's no way that they should be being used as a way or a platform and taking away their needs of what they need to elevate, push 5G, or deal with the troubling past of a company pertaining to elections. I also want to address that in Legislative Bill 43, it's an omnibus bill, ER 44, addressing in the process about certain records, cybersecurity not being known or being withheld from the public on line 7 to allow certain records relating to cybersecurity to be withheld from the public as prescribed. I want to make sure that whatever company that would go forward to help our first responders and what they need, I think that need comes ahead of any areas of beautifying the Capitol that our first responders, firefighters, ambulance, everything of communications and within the state that they need to have, that's not putting them in danger. However, I believe that there is an alternative and that needs to be discussed. This should not be something that's rushed ahead with the company that you're looking forward to make these communications through, but rather one that has a proven track record of putting their needs, protecting the lives of the people in other states, but again, a very difference in not having anything or connection to elections. Furthermore, the question on when the contract comes forward with that on the interoperability and cybersecurity side of things in these areas to make sure that they are allowed or the communications that are needed, and that there can't be a lockup pertaining to or underneath the cybersecurity or CISA that they cannot have or access certain information. This is very important to go through those contracts as well to make sure, again, that our first responders have the communications, the ability that's covered through cybersecurity, interoperability, and tying all this together. Furthermore, we want to make sure that in the state of Nebraska pertaining to radiation, it would be foolish of us not to look at certain areas of where 5G is and where the radiation has not been safe for the people in the radiation levels on those areas. So I just bring those things to your attention and say that we do need communications with our first responders, but we need to make sure we build that foundation right, and that there's not a nefarious activity or a push. As we know, this state cannot even get the cast vote records or source code in areas of election, and now it's questionable of LB 43 or ER 44 that if they can even be given that, or if the state now has totally shut it down, and it's not far from becoming law. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen with our first responders and what their needs are as well.
Very good. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Are there additional neutral testifiers? Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements, members of the committee. My name is Dave Collett, DAVECOLLETT, and I manage the statewide radio system for the state of Nebraska. Senator Wishart, I wanted to just answer a few questions here that you had because I'm the person who does it. So you had mentioned something about it would be great to have a statewide system that everybody could use. We have one. The state of Nebraska about 15 years ago decided that they were going to fund a statewide radio system, and they have done it much better than many other states have done. I came from the state of Arizona 3 years ago. The state of Arizona has nothing like what the state of Nebraska has right now. There are connections to the statewide radio system across the entire state. 95% of the state is covered for mobile radio coverage. And one of the things that some of the responders were concerned about is the portable radio coverage. So one of the things that we have done with the money that you provided last year is we have provided in-vehicular repeaters that can allow those portable radios to talk through the vehicle back onto the statewide radio system. So that is partially what we have done with the money that you have provided us. We were able to do that for now, I think our final count was 186 different volunteer fire departments that we were able to provide radios to. So yes, we do have a system, and it's a really good system. It could be better, but everything can be better. It's just a matter of money and time. There was some talk about the frequency bands. The statewide radio system is frequency agnostic, so you can use any frequency band that you want to there on the statewide radio system. We currently have 800 meg and VHF on the statewide radio system. Many of the different fire departments in the state do use UHF, which is in between the two of those. The radios that we propose to provide and that we are providing this year use all three frequency bands, so they can be used by everybody. Let's see. There was a question about how the radios were distributed, Senator Dover. The radios were distributed. We took a look at the applications we had. We split them up by the different troop districts to make sure, we wanted to make sure that we divided them across the state, that we didn't just provide them in one area of the state or the other, that we have provided them in all different areas of the state. So we split up all those into troop distribution areas. And then we also took a look at the size of the departments. We wanted to make sure that we gave them to large departments and small departments. We didn't want, so we divided them into quartiles of the size of the departments and split them up that way. So we made sure that we distributed them as equitably as we could. When it finally came down to it, we did a random number generator, and we randomly assigned them to those that, because every department that applied for one had a need for one, was within our parameters for getting one. So it basically just came down to this, we had to pick somebody. So anyway, that was my statement. My question.
Senator Wisher?
Well, this was very helpful. Thank you for being here, and thanks for all the work you did on getting that funding out across the state, because what we're hearing is it was very successful and there was a lot more need than we had funded. So it's good to hear there's a statewide system. And so is the main issue then access for some of these volunteer departments to the types of radios they would need to connect?
Yes, the expense of the radios is the big issues. For use on the statewide system, we use the national standard, which is Project 25. And it is a standard that was developed after, or actually been developed in development since the 80s for public safety. But it's a very expensive standard to use for radios. So the issue is the expense of the equipment.
Okay. Has OCIO done a calculation on what it would cost to provide every volunteer station enough radios for, we talked about 2 radios for 12 vehicles at each station, and enough radios to fully equip them for what they need across the state?
No, we have not done that. I would think that if I came to you with that number, it would probably be in the hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions?
Yeah.
Okay.
To supply everybody with a radio that could work on the statewide radio system.
Okay. But what that tells me is that there's a significant need.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Dover?
A couple questions. So one would be, my understanding in Madison County that, Mike Flood has a radio station, and there was a $650,000 repeater that had to be put on a tower.
Correct.
And so Mike Flood used his tower. But obviously, if he didn't, they would have had to put up a tower. Do you know how many are there towers that are lacking across the state to implement this system, to put the repeaters on? And if so, how many would that be?
So currently we have 85 separate towers across the state. But every county that has put up a tower, or anybody that puts up a tower that has had any funding from the state, is required to provide
a space on that tower for the statewide radio system. We have looked at what we needed for coverage across the state, and currently that is what we have at our 85 separate towers. If we do have an area where we have reduced coverage, and there are still a few areas of the state up in the Sand Hills, in the central Cherry County, some of the areas in there still do not have as good of coverage as I would like to have. And so as we look at those and as we have the funding available to increase that, we look at those areas where we first have a need for coverage, and then do we have an available tower? Do we have an available shelter? Is there generator power? Is there other things that we need there to create a public safety grade radio site? Is that,
Yeah.
did that answer your question or not?
Yeah, I think so. And then there was obviously an OCIO bid that we were given for a number of radios. Are you familiar with that bid?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So what was the basis that was it? You were able to drive that numbers of radios. So is that specific? I mean, who are fire departments or don't have?
So the for the LB 1275. Actually, I'm the one that put together those numbers for the OCIO. For LB 1275, what I looked at is we had 168 or 186 departments that we have currently funded for radios. I looked and said, okay, we could do at least three. There's 472, I think, across the state. So I was looking at adding about 300 more volunteer fire departments for that. There are also many volunteer fire departments that are larger fire departments that could use a second set of radios, as you alluded to, saying that we need more than just one. So that would be for a second kit for those. And then after those, then looking at starting to provide individual radios for each one of the users. So that's where I came up with those numbers.
And then so like Madison County, where Norfolk's fire department has their radios, that's at least that's my limited understanding.
Right.
You adjusted all the way across for those counties that took ARPA funds and gave radios to the fire departments.
At this point, I did not adjust for those counties because many of those also the volunteer. Yes, Madison County has provided their users with radios, but they still don't have as many as they need.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the committee?
Just one more question. This type of radio investment to allow for these volunteer departments to get onto the statewide network, how long does that radio last?
That's a good question. So I've seen these radios last up to 20, 25 years. They are actually very good. They are public safety grade. They are some of the best radios made. And so they definitely have been made for the harsh conditions. We are assuming that they will last a minimum of 10 years.
Other questions? I had a question which I think I figured out. 23 million divided by 300 units is $76,000 per unit. Is that the unit cost?
Actually, not quite. For the radio kits that we have been putting out, they are $26,000 per. So I'm looking at doing more than one per 300. Doing more than one for each one of those.
That's more like three then.
Extended funding.
25,000?
Yeah, it's about $25,000 for one of the kits that we're putting out.
So that would provide 3 units.
Yes.
For 300 departments.
Right. Well, there's 472 departments, and we've done 168, but only with a single unit so far. So.
And let's see, how many applications did you have?
This round, we had a total of 209 applications. And we had it open for about 25 days. So in 25 days, we ended up with 209 applications. We were a little pressed on time just because of the funding, the 1-year funding, and, have to have it spent by the end of, by the end of June. It is all spent at the moment. We will not have any money left over with that. But one of the things in the 1275 bill is we asked for 2 years to do it instead of just one, because it did take a little bit of time mostly just to get the radios in.
Any questions?
I do. So whether it's just for clarification, so whether it's the handheld tri-band radio, which then they're front loading the fees up front,
Yes.
right? So you don't have a monthly fee. And then to set up, configure, and program, and whether it's really the handheld tri-band or the mobile tri-band, which is a single control head for like a truck where somebody's in the truck and there's nobody in back, and the mobile tri-band dual control head, which is like ambulance where you got somebody in front and somebody in back, or maybe, I don't know if fire would be that way. Those are all around $12,000, right? Inclusive for
each,
radio.
Yeah, for each individual radio, yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify.
Oh.
Yep.
All right, I see. Yeah, I see fiscal analyst showing me the $12,000 number. Any other questions? Seeing none? Is there anyone else here in the neutral capacity?
Thank you. Thank you.
Seeing none, do we have comments for the record? LB 1090 has 3 proponents, no opponents, none in the neutral. LB 1275 has 6 proponents, no opponents, none in the neutral. LB 1378 has 1 proponent, 5 opponents, none in the neutral capacity. That concludes our hearing for LB 1090, LB 1275, and LB 1378. Thank you all for coming. So if you got one radio. I was gonna ask that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
We put one radio each.
Did you have a?
How you doing?
Yes.
Hi. Sorry, I was gone most of the time. I had a bill.
Senator.
We have one word.
Senator Clements.
Yes.
We have another bill.
Oh, yeah, we got another bill. Mike, they can't come up here. It's illegal. Man, I want to throw these people out. Who's in charge here?
Have conversations, please take them outside the room. We have another bill here.
Okay. Don't talk to me. Here we go.
We'll now open the hearing for LB 1380, Senator Dover.
Thank you, Chairman Clements, and good afternoon, almost good evening almost, committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Dover, R-O-B-E-R-T, D-O-V-E-R. I represent District 19, which consists of Madison County and the southern half of Pierce County. I've introduced LB 1380 on behalf of Wyuka Board of Trustees to gain additional funding for their capital construction project at Wyuka Cemetery. The funds will be used to fill a gap in the construction costs of the state-owned cemetery stormwater runoff project. Wyuka Cemetery is the second largest resting place for veterans in the state and is the only state-owned cemetery in Nebraska. However, it is not supported by state dollars. There are plans for Wyuka to have a public park in the southwest corner. An essential part of the park is a pond. When there are storms, this pond currently fills with sediment that washes down from the area housing developments. Getting this funding will enable Wyuka to complete a project that prevents the stormwater runoff from filling the pond with sediment. In 2022, Wyuka received a $1.8 million grant, $1.8 million in ARPA funds for this project. Unfortunately, with rising costs of construction, the project is currently short of funding. LB 1380 would provide $375,000 for Wyuka to close their funding gap and finish this project. Greg Osborne has been selected by the Wyuka Board of Trustees to move this project forward. He will be giving his testimony after me. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony and we welcome proponents.
Good afternoon, early evening, I guess. My name is Greg Osborne, G-R-E-G-O-S-B-O-R-N. Chairman Clements and Senators of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of LB 1380 today. And thank you, Senator Dover, for introducing the bill for us. I'm here as a representative of the Board of Trustees for Wyuka Cemetery and Funeral Home. Wyuka Cemetery was established in state statute in 1869, and the state purchased the first acres and designated the southwest corner of that property, which includes the pond, to be a public park. The control and management of Wyuka is vested in a corporate body known as Wyuka Board of Trustees. There are 5 trustees that are appointed by the governor that sit on this board. Since established, Wyuka has never received any state funding of any type or been part of the state budget until the 2022 legislature awarded $1.8 million of ARPA funds for this stormwater project. I'm here today to ask the committee for an additional funds in the amount of $373,431.85, which is the deficit to complete this project. The stormwater structure is the drainage system for 255 acres of residential and commercial property south of Wyuka Cemetery. Hopefully, you all received my email on July 24th that detailed our request and explained the deficit. Also attached to that email was the history of the cover letter for the 2022 ARPA funds and the Wyuka Pond and Stream Study, along with a schematic design detailing the complete stormwater project. This was phase 1 and paid for by Wyuka Cemetery in the amount of $41,900. Nebraska Department of Administrative Services took over the project and assigned Matt Shaw of Building to manage the project. Phase 2 was final engineering, design, and developing an RFP that was completed in early of 2023 and went out for public bid in July of 2023. The state and JEO Consulting Group estimated the construction cost at approximately $1.5 million. The cost breakdown of the 1.8 ARPA funds managed by DAS are approximately $195,000 was used for phase 2, leaving a little over $1.6 million for construction, well over the estimated cost. Due to dramatic increases in construction costs and material, the low bid of $1.978 million was much higher than estimated. Through discussions with the state and JEO Consulting Group and Wyuka Cemetery Board of Trustees, the low bid was accepted in August 2023, knowing of the deficit of just a little under $374,000. The construction phase 3 started in October. Thank you for your consideration of LB 1380. Hopefully, the history, the deficit explanation, the cover letter, and the letters of support in my testimony today will garner your support. The completion of this project will greatly benefit the public by creating a better drainage flow system for the 255 acres that drain through this structure, and also will help reestablish the beauty of the public park that would be first here, was the first public park here in Lincoln. Again, I ask for your support for LB 1380 and ask for you to be our cheerleaders when it reaches the floor. If you have any questions about this or Wyuka, I'd sure be glad to help.
Other questions? Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you, Mr. Osborne, for your house cousin Tom doing.
He's doing well.
Okay. So explain to me a little bit about phase 2. 195,000 DAS had that for, what was phase 2?
Phase 2 was that in phase 1, we determined what was needed and the project details of completing the stormwater run-through situation. The phase 2 of that was an extension of that, but it was the final design, the drafting portion, and putting together the schematics to make it work. And then also was to put out or to build the RFP to be put out to public bid. So that was phase 2.
Okay, so did DAS hire JEO to do that part of it as well?
Yeah, JEO was actually our consultant in the beginning. And when we got the ARPA funds, DAS has an agreement with JEO as part of their circle. And so they just took that over and we changed the contract to be the state of Nebraska instead of Wyuka Cemetery.
You may know the answer to this, you may not, and you can answer if you know. Was the overrun, was it a cost in material like piping or whatever you had to use? Is that why it was more money?
Well, the only thing that I could probably say on that would be is cost of construction material was probably the majority of that, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to say that because there were some sections of the RFP that even the labor, so to speak, was a lot higher than they anticipated too. Okay. The element is that there was a dramatic difference after 2020. We started this project in 2017 when the ARPA funds were awarded to Wyuka in 2022. It still took us almost another year and a half before we could put it out to public bid. And the next bid up was over $1 million higher than the one that Wyuka took. I can't really tell you, it's amazing to me that amount of cost difference. The hard cost of this is the $374,000, but actually it was $575 short. But that doesn't include what we were raising money for was the contingency fund of $170,000 that's not in here. If something doesn't go right in that, but through discussions with the Strong Ties who won the award, and things were through the place where additional costs could have happened. So Wyuka is willing to take on the possibility of having $150,000 area there if need be. And then also our ongoing and maintenance and care for the pond is going to be the responsibility of Wyuka too. And the Board of Trustees have accepted that.
Do you get revenue from people being placed in your cemetery, or where's your revenue come?
The revenue comes from sales for the cemetery, and then all the funeral services through the funeral home. That's how that
So when you made the request for 1.8 million, there was no contingency in there? You didn't have an
There
idea
was,
what the
but
cost
it's a-
over?
there
It was
was.
over that?
It was.
Because we had a request for a museum on the 5th floor, and they got a 25% overrun contingency. Yeah, just thought I'd mention that for the record. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions? I had a couple of questions. Has the city of Lincoln contributed anything to this project?
No.
Have you asked them?
Yes. They did the stormwater structure that is there was done in 2011 by the city and Olson's engineering, and it failed. Because it filled our pond up in 7 years.
Right.
And the pond was originally 8 to 10 feet deep. So that's when we started this in 2017, not knowing what to do. But our issue is the cleanliness of the water and the people that were around our pond. So that's kind of where it all got started. And then we started to do this. And in the U.S. Treasury Rules of Order that come out in January 2022, they added stormwater runoff capabilities to use some of the ARP funds, and that's where we jumped into it to see if we
So
can
you
make that
say
happen.
the city's design failed, well, or it did succeed for what the city wanted, but it failed for what you wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
that's probably true.
It directed the
runoff
runoff into your pond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a Lower Platte South NRD that governs Lincoln. Have you requested Lower Platte South NRD to help with this? They work on water and drainage, don't they?
Yes, actually, they helped us with the first phase in a 50-50 cost share program. But once the construction started, once the Department of Administrative Services got involved in it and awarded the funds, they won't participate anymore because it has to be done prior to all of that. And they aren't going to share in the $1.8 million project, but what we were hoping for was if we were short 150 or $200,000, that maybe we could talk them into doing a 50-50 cost share.
So how much did they contribute?
21.7, I think it was. I'd have to look back, Senator. I'm not
That's
positive,
close
but it was
enough.
21.7,
All right.
somewhere in there. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. 21,700?
Yes.
Wow, that was generous.
Yeah.
So I think maybe what you ought to do is go to the city and get some money for their pothole restoration fund, because they haven't been using any.
Well, they said that they filled 700 and some potholes,
Pothole
a
season
day.
came early.
And I'm thinking, where?
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your
Okay,
testimony.
thank you
Mr.
so
Osborne.
much.
Are there other proponents for LB 1380?
Afternoon, Senators. My
Welcome.
name is Steve Peregrine, Peregrine. I am the president of the Wyuka Historical Foundation. I support LB 1380 appropriating the $375,000 to the Department of Administrative Services to fill the funding gap that you've heard about due to increased construction costs for the Wyuka Cemetery's pond and drainageway project. As Greg mentioned, DAS is fully managing the project. As you heard, the cost of the project has exceeded the engineer's original estimates, and at the lowest bid and now, which was a basis of $1.8 million. And so now we have this funding shortfall. As you have heard, Wyuka Cemetery was established by an act of the Nebraska Legislature in 1869 to provide a Lincoln State Cemetery for the state's new capital city. Wyuka Cemetery is governed by 5 trustees appointed by the governor and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places since 1982. Wyuka is a public charitable organization and essentially operates as an independent state agency and is self-supporting. However, the magnitude of this project led the trustees to seek financing from the state. The Wyuka Historical Foundation was established in 1997 to support the preservation, interpretation, and public use of Wyuka Cemetery. The foundation has raised funds to assist in the renovation and maintenance of the Rudge Chapel, the stables, to place simple stone markers on some of the hundreds of unmarked orphaned children's graves, and to begin to address the removal and replacement of some of the over 2,100 trees in the cemetery. But the pond and the drainageway infrastructure project is too large a cost for the foundation to be a source to fill the gap. Thank you for your opportunity to provide my support for LB 1380.
Are there questions, Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. What's your annual revenue? You know how much you take in?
The foundation?
The cemetery?
No, I do not. I'm on the foundation board, not a trustee of the cemetery.
Okay, should ask, great.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Yes, Mr. Ronco to come back. We'll ask him to provide information to us separately. All right, any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, anyone here in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, do we have any position comments? We have position comments for the record. Proponents 14, opponents none, neutral none. That concludes the hearing for LB 1380. Thank you. And that is our last item of agenda. We are adjourned.